Chapter 1. Tianlan held the baby in her arms in a daze. She looked at the newborn baby in her arms, and there was only one thing in her mind. The baby is so ugly. Tianlan looked at the baby for a while and came to this conclusion. Auntie Lien said that newborns were all like this and that they would be very beautiful when they grew up. Tianlan had never seen another baby, so Auntie Lien must be telling the truth. Tianlan didn't doubt it at all. This baby was Tianlan's only blood relative since she came to this world. It was a child that Tianlan gave birth to a few days ago. Tianlan was confused. She was living with her master on Mount Yuehua. Why was she here when she woke up? Why was she giving birth? Tianlan couldn't understand these things. She didn't want to think too much about things she didn't understand. Auntie Lien was the first person she saw when she woke up. She looked very strange, with long blue hair, green eyes, and spoke a strange language. She made chicken soup for Tianlan, but she didn't make much each time. That was why Auntie Lien was so stingy. Auntie Lien said that her name was Fengwu. Everyone in the family called her Xiao Wu. Her master said that for a swordsman, the only important thing was their sword. Other things weren't important. So Tianlan, Fengwu, quickly accepted her new name. She didn't force herself to change her name. Little miss, it's time to eat. Auntie Lien made pig trotters for you today. You must eat more. A woman in her 30s with a gentle smile walked in with a pot of stewing soup. The woman first placed the pot on the table, then placed a small table that was meant for Xiao Wu to eat on the bed. Only then did she place the pot on the table. Fengwu handed the baby to Auntie Lien out of habit and happily ate the soup in the pot. This time, there was clearly more soup than a few days ago. Auntie Lien was a good person. She wasn't stingy. Fengwu changed quickly. Fengwu was so engrossed in eating her pig trotters that she didn't notice that Auntie Lien was looking at her with a puzzled expression. Aunt Lien wanted to cry every time she saw Fengwu. Fengwu was the young miss of the Feng family. The Feng family only had 2 children in this generation. One was Feng Juntian, and the other was Fengwu. Feng Juntian was handsome and mature, so he was well liked by the elders in the family. On the other hand, Feng Juntian's twin sister, Fengwu, had an unruly and willful personality. She often bullied her cousins in the family and was an unlikable little evil girl. However, one day, this evil girl was suddenly discovered to be pregnant. The Feng family's master was furious. He captured Fengwu and brought her to the ancestral hall for interrogation. He was unable to find out who the father of the child was. In his fury, the Feng family's master originally wanted to kill Fengwu to save himself the trouble. He wanted to prevent her from giving birth to a child that would ruin the Feng family's reputation. Of course, the Feng family's master's decision was not successful. Fengwu's parents and her older brother, Feng Juntian, who had never been close to her, all knelt down and begged for mercy for Fengwu. In the end, the Feng family's master ordered that Fengwu be sent to the countryside. Aside from Auntie Lien, who was in charge of taking care of Fengwu, no one else went with her. The Feng family had specially bought a small courtyard in the countryside for Fengwu. After all, it was only enough for 2 people to live in. There was no need to buy a large room, and Auntie Lien couldn't clean it up by herself. Before leaving the Feng family, the Feng family's people repeatedly warned Auntie Lien not to take care of anyone else. She alone was enough to take care of Fengwu. Madame Feng's meaning was that after Fengwu secretly gave birth to a child, she would think of a way to appease the old master's anger. When that time came, she would send Fengwu back. Fortunately, although the young miss had done something wrong in the past, the master, madam, and young master had not completely given up on the young miss. Auntie Lien sadly thought of these things. She began to feel troubled about Fengwu's future. The young miss had already given birth to a beautiful baby boy, but the madam only told her to focus on taking care of the young miss. She didn't say when she would come to take the young miss back. Although she knew that this matter could not be rushed, and the key point was still to see what the old master wanted, looking at this pure and cute young miss, Auntie Lien didn't know what to do. The young miss was only 14 years old. Because she had gotten pregnant too early, she had become a mother at such a young age. This was an extremely rare thing in the entire Heavenly Wind continent. In this world, everyone wanted to cultivate to a higher level of magic or the strongest sword skills. Because of magic, people generally had very long lives. After cultivating to the saint level, magicians or saint-level sword masters would have a lifespan of over 1,000 years. No one would do something as stupid as getting pregnant in their teens. Wanting to have a child was very harmful to the mother's body. After giving birth, a woman's power would be greatly damaged. Thus, many female swordsmen and magicians were unwilling to have children. Even if they wanted to have children, they wouldn't do it while they were young. After all, it was the prime time to practice magic and swordsmanship in their teens. Everyone was pursuing greater power, and no one would have the time to think about such things. He didn't know if it was because the young miss suffered too much shock, but ever since she left the Feng family, she hadn't spoken much. When she gave birth, her heart stopped beating. However, after her heart stopped for 2 minutes, she miraculously recovered and gave birth to this child. Auntie Lien was very satisfied with this pure young miss. Seeing such a well-behaved young miss, perhaps the master would change his mind and take the young miss home. "I'm done eating." Fengwu drank the last mouthful of soup and smiled in satisfaction. Auntie Lien stared dumbfoundedly at the bottom of the pot. That was enough for 5 people. The young miss had finished drinking so quickly. No matter how many times she watched, Auntie Lien still felt it was inconceivable. Fengwu obediently stayed in bed for a month under Auntie Lien's insistence. Every day, aside from eating, she slept. Her small body finally gained a bit of weight. Her weak body from giving birth had recovered. Auntie Lien also felt that Fengwu's recovery was very inconceivable. On the day of giving birth, the young miss vitality had been greatly damaged. With just one glance, she could tell that the young miss vitality had been greatly damaged. It would take at least a year or so to recover. However, it only took a month for the young miss face to become rosy again. Her body was clearly better than before she gave birth. Auntie Lien couldn't think of a reason, so she asked Fengwu. Fengwu only looked at her strangely with a puzzled expression. Auntie Lien thought that Fengwu didn't know what was going on either, so she didn't think too much about it. She didn't want to be entangled in this unsolvable matter. Auntie Lien didn't expect that Fengwu would think after she asked this question, is a month considered very fast? Recently, she had been diligently practicing the internal energy that her master had taught her. She had only recovered 20% of her internal energy, so it took a month for her body to recover. This speed was already very slow. If her master knew, he would be scolded. Fengwu's baby could eat a lot. Even if Auntie Lien gave Fengwu a lot of nourishment every day, she still couldn't satisfy the little ancestor's needs. Often, because he didn't have enough to eat, he would pout and cry miserably. At this time, Fengwu, as a mother, would look at the crying baby and say seriously, "Baby, don't cry. Crying children aren't good children. Look, even your mother doesn't cry." Of course, no matter how smart the baby was, he couldn't understand what she was saying. The baby didn't give her any face and continued to cry. Every time this happened, Fengwu would give the baby to Auntie Lien with a serious expression and say seriously, "He's not a good child. He's not obedient." When she spoke, her small face was serious. Only her large eyes revealed a trace of grievance. It seemed that she felt wronged by the baby's unfilial behavior. Chapter 2. Back at Mount Yuehua, her master had taught her the same thing. But she had been obedient, and her master would pat her head and say she was a good child. Tianlan liked being praised by her master, so she worked hard to be obedient. Her master said that warriors shed blood, but not tears. Crying was the behavior of the weak. Tianlan was very obedient, and she never cried again. Her master liked Tianlan to be strong, so Tianlan had to do her best to make her master praise her. Although she couldn't see her master now, Tianlan would still do her best to follow her master's instructions. In Tianlan's heart, her master was the strongest. She would definitely know how obedient Tianlan was. Aunt Lien looked at the aggrieved woman and child, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't understand why the little miss liked to talk to the baby so much even though she had told her that the baby couldn't understand her. "Little miss, we can't go on like this. I think we should hire a wet nurse for the baby." Although the madam had ordered that no one should be sent to take care of the little miss. But now she had to take care of the little young master. That shouldn't be a problem, right? Should, right? Fengwu didn't know what a wet nurse was, so she didn't say anything. In Fengwu's heart, Aunt Lien was the second strongest person after her master. Not only did she know how to cook, but she also knew how to take care of the baby. She always knew when the baby was hungry or wet. She didn't say anything. Fengwu admired these things. So every time Aunt Lien took care of the baby, Fengwu would look at her with admiration. It made Aunt Lien feel very embarrassed. Aunt Lien moved quickly. The next day, she found a wet nurse from town. But the wet nurse didn't work for half a day before she had to leave. It wasn't that the wet nurse wasn't good. It was just that the little ancestor was too picky. He would only drink his own mother's breast milk. If other women were to feed him, the little ancestor would rather be hungry and cry until his face turned red than give them the honor of drinking. Aunt Lien had no choice but to invite a few wet nurses to try, but none of them worked. The little ancestor said he wouldn't eat, and he wouldn't eat. It gave Aunt Lien a headache. Auntie Lien took some silver coins and sent the wet nurses away. Then, she and Fengwu sat together and looked at the baby in Fengwu's arms, who was drinking her mother's milk. Their expressions were troubled. It was obvious that the little fellow could not suck any more milk, but he was still desperately trying to suck a mouthful of milk. His little face was red because of the exertion, and his small eyes were already filled with tears. If it were not for the fact that he could not bear to part with his little mother's milk, he would probably have exploded by now. "Auntie Lien, what should we do?" Fengwu glanced at the baby who was sucking hard, then tilted her head and looked at Auntie Lien with trust. Seeing the trust in Fengwu's eyes, Auntie Lien felt awkward. Since the young master is not willing to drink human milk, we can only try to see if he is willing to drink the milk of a magical beast. But magical beasts that have just given birth usually have their partners guarding them. It is very difficult to approach them. This is very difficult. Aunt Lien muttered to herself as she pondered. When Fengwu heard Auntie Lien's words, her eyes lit up. She looked at Auntie Lien and asked very seriously, "Where are the magical beasts?" "There are magical beasts in the nearby mountains. Although their levels are not very high, there are many of them. It is not easy to catch them." Auntie Lien was worried about the little ancestor's food problem, so she did not notice the girl's shining eyes. When Fengwu heard Auntie Lien's words, she looked at the little fellow who was about to cry. She made a decision in her heart. She was going to find food for the baby. To Fengwu, the baby was the closest person to her other than her master. So, it was very important that the baby did not have enough to eat. Fengwu did not like the feeling of being hungry. Being hungry was very annoying. So, she wanted to find food for the baby. The next day, before dawn, Fengwu left a letter for Auntie Lien. She told Auntie Lien that she was going to find food for the baby. Then, she carried the sleeping baby on her back and left the small courtyard where she had lived for more than a month. This was the first time Fengwu had gone out. Because the sky was still dark and the morning market was not open, there was not a single person on the street. Auntie Lien had said that the magical beasts lived in the nearby mountains. So, Fengwu carefully looked at the nearby mountains. Although the sky was still dark, Fengwu had been practicing martial arts since she was a child. So, looking at the nearby mountains was not a big problem. Soon, Fengwu found her target. The mountain in the middle was the highest. The magical beasts must be there. So, her little mother, Fengwu, quickly walked in the direction of that mountain. The baby would be hungry when he woke up. So, she had to quickly find milk for him to drink. Fengwu quickly reached the foot of the mountain. She looked at the towering peak and walked up without changing her expression. The mountain path was not easy to walk on, but it was not a problem for Fengwu. Fengwu had never climbed this mountain before, but she was not afraid of getting lost. If she did not know the way, she would ask the nearby animals. These animals looked very strange, and she had never seen them before. However, this did not stop Fengwu from making new friends. When she lived on Mount Yuehua, the animals on the mountain were all Tianlan's friends. Because Tianlan could understand what the animals said, and the animals all liked Tianlan, when she heard Auntie Lien say that she needed to find the milk of a magical beast to feed the baby, she did not think it was a difficult task. Although Fengwu did not know what a magical beast was, since it had the word beast, it must be an animal. In Tianlan's heart, magical beasts were animals, and animals were friends. So, Fengwu had always been optimistic and did not find it difficult at all. Little doggy, do you know where the magical beast is? Fengwu, who was carrying the baby, saw an animal that looked like a little dog walk by. She immediately ran to its side. The little animal was very wary of Fengwu at first, but when it heard Fengwu speak, it became suspicious and let down its guard. Who are you? The little doggy was very curious. Why did it feel so close to this strange girl? It instinctively wanted to get closer to her. Hello, little doggy. My name is Tianlan, but you can call me Xiaolan. My baby is hungry, so Auntie Lien said that she needed to find a magical beast to feed the baby, so Tianlan came to find a magical beast. Fengwu looked at the little doggy in front of her, a rare smile on her serious face. I'm not a little doggy. I'm a howling moon hound, a great magical beast. I'm not a little doggy in your human world. The howling moon hound looked at Fengwu with disdain. The name, little doggy, made the howling moon hound feel deeply insulted. It knew that in the human world, there was an ordinary animal called a dog. Although dogs and their howling moon hounds had some similarities, how could a proud magical beast like to be compared with an ordinary animal that did not have any magic power at all? Oh, then I'll call you Xiaoyu, okay? Fengwu looked at the howling moon hound with anticipation. The howling moon hound was embarrassed by her stare. Alright, since this human is not annoying, I'll let her call me Xiaoyu. The howling moon hound nodded. Fengwu was happy. She looked at the howling moon hound in front of her with anticipation. Xiaoyu, are you a magical beast? Then do you have a magical beast in your family that just gave birth? Can I trouble it to feed my baby? I don't think there are any in my family that just gave birth. Xiaoyu thought for a moment and said. There were a few howling moon hounds that just got pregnant, but it took a long time for them to give birth. Magical beasts usually had long pregnancies. It was common for them to be pregnant for 3 to 7 years, or even more than 10 years. The longer they stayed in their mother's womb, the stronger their talents would be after they were born. Then what should we do, Xiaoyu? Auntie Lien said that we need to find a magical beast to feed the baby. Fengwu's eyes turned red as she looked at Xiaoyu sadly. Hey! Don't cry. Xiaoyu panicked when she saw the girl's red eyes. I'm not crying. Master said that crying is for the weak, so Tianlan never cries. Fengwu nodded seriously. Hearing Fengwu's solemn words, they couldn't help but believe her. Chapter 3. Alright, you didn't cry. I saw wrongly. Xiaoye was helpless. If she didn't cry, then so be it. Actually, if you want to feed your baby, you don't need to use magical beast milk at all. There is a milkberry tree in this forest. The milkberries on the tree are the favorite food of magical beasts. The juice in the milkberries is very delicious, and the juice has a faint magic power. It is very suitable for the baby to eat. If you are in a hurry, I can help you pick some milkberries. Really? Thank you, Xiaoye. Xiaoye is so nice. Fengwu smiled very happily. To be able to help the baby find something to eat and not have to go hungry, to Fengwu, it was a very happy thing. Then wait for me here. I will help you pick some milkberries. The milkberries are in the center of the forest. Only magical beasts like us can go there. That is the favorite place of magical beasts. As soon as a human enters that place, they will be hunted down by all the magical beasts. Xiaoye thought that she was going all out for this human who had made a good impression on her. Then I will wait for you here. Fengwu nodded her little head obediently. In the past, when she was at Mount Yuehua, the little animals also had their own gathering place. Even Fengwu could only go there if she was invited. If she stepped in casually, she would be treated as an enemy and attacked. Therefore, Fengwu had no intention of going to the place that Xiaoye mentioned. Half an hour later, Xiaoye, a howling moon hound, ran back. After it ran in front of Fengwu, it waved its little paw and a large pile of milkberries appeared in front of Fengwu. These milkberries were not big, only the size of an apple. They were milky white and emitted a faint magic power. Fengwu saw so many milkberries and her eyes lit up. That's amazing, Xiaoye. Xiaoye raised her head a little arrogantly. Give one to your baby to try. Fengwu took the top one from the pile of fruits. How do I eat this? Use your nails to scratch the skin and let him suck the juice inside. Fengwu did as she was told and placed the fruit next to little Baozi's mouth. Sure enough, little Baozi smacked his lips and sucked on the fruit with relish. Although the milk fruit was only the size of an apple, there was a lot of juice inside. Although Fengwu's buns tasted better than other buns, he still couldn't finish sucking the juice out of one milk fruit. After the baby was full, the Fengwu didn't waste the rest of the food. She sucked up the juice in a few mouthfuls. After eating her fill, Fengwu began to worry about a problem. With so many milk fruits, how was she going to take them away? Fortunately, this problem did not trouble Fengwu for too long. Xiaoye helped her solve it. This is for you, take it and put it away. A black metal ring flew towards Fengwu in a parabola. Fengwu stretched out her small hand and caught it. This is a storage ring for you humans. We magical beasts don't need this thing. Drip your blood on it and take it. Xiaoye said generously. When magical beasts were born, they had a life space in their bodies to store things they needed. Only humans would like this kind of storage magic tool. This ring was left behind by a seriously injured human hundreds of years ago. At that time, it was picked up by Xiaoye's father. After Xiaoye was born, this ring became Xiaoye's toy. Now that Xiaoye thought that it had grown up and no longer needed to play with this kind of toy, it was very generous to give it to Fengwu. Anyway, it was just a toy in its hands and had no use at all. Fengwu felt that this new storage ring was very novel. After dripping her blood on it to identify it, not only did she put the milk fruits inside, but she also experimented with the stones and flowers next to it. At the same time, at the foot of the mountain, Auntie Lian was anxiously waiting for Fengwu to return home. After Fengwu left a note and left, Auntie Lian was so anxious that she almost went to the village chief to organize people to look for her. Just as Auntie Lian was anxiously walking around in circles, an unexpected person appeared. Housekeeper Luoda, why are you here? Auntie Lian looked at the middle-aged man who appeared at the door with surprise. Luoda was the Feng family's housekeeper. He was in charge of looking for the Feng family's business outside. His position in the Feng family was very high. Auntie Lien could not imagine that such a person would actually appear in this small village. It was the master who told me to come. You have already taken care of Miss Fengwu for so long. Miss Fengwu's body has almost recovered. The master wants you to go back immediately. Madam needs you. With Luo Da's position, it was impossible for him to not know what had happened to Fengwu. Luo Da did not have any feelings towards this exiled Feng family member. As a servant, he did not have the right to think or talk about his master's family matters. Go now. But the young miss still hasn't returned. I'm worried. Before Auntie Lien could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Luo Da. This is the master's wish. As a servant, you only need to do as the master says. Luo Da waved his hand and did not let Auntie Lien finish speaking. But what about Miss Fengwu? She had just finished her confinement. The young miss did not have enough milk, and the young master was picky about milk. If she left now, how could he be at ease? No buts. Pack up and leave now. The master is still waiting for us to return and report. Luo Da sternly shouted. As a servant, he did not have the right to disobey his master's orders. Auntie Lien was scared back to her senses by Luo Da's shout. Yes, she was only a servant. She had to do whatever her master said. She did not have the right to disobey her master. I'll go pack up and leave a letter for the young miss. Once I'm done, we'll leave. Auntie Lien helplessly compromised. This time, Luo Da did not say anything. It could be considered that he agreed. Auntie Lien let out a sigh of relief. At the very least, she could leave a letter for the young miss to tell her where she was going. She only hoped that the young miss could take good care of herself and the young master. Auntie Lien did not bring many things. Originally, the Feng family had Auntie Lien take care of Fengwu. They only wanted her to take care of Fengwu until she finished her confinement. The actions of the previous master made the Feng family very disappointed. They basically did not care about her feelings. Auntie Lien spent 10 or so minutes packing up and leaving behind a simple letter. Just like that, she followed housekeeper Luo Da and left the village. When Fengwu returned from a rewarding journey, she only saw a letter that Auntie Lien had left on the table. The letter said that the Feng family had come and that Auntie Lien had to return to the Feng family to report. Auntie Lien also told her to take good care of herself. In addition, her mother had left her a crystal card. Every month, 20 gold coins would be deposited into the card. This money was her monthly living expenses and other information. Fengwu blinked her eyes. After a few seconds, she remembered that Auntie Lien had left and would never return. Fengwu was a bit sad. Auntie Lien's cooking was very delicious. It was a pity that she left. Alright, for a young female lead who was a foodie, eating was still the most important. Fortunately, Auntie Lien had already finished cooking before she left. Fengwu finished the food and fed little steamed bun half a milkberry. The two of them lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Chapter 4. This day was destined to be a restless day. Late at night, the entire village was brightly lit. Screams, cries for help, and the sound of fighting and killing spread throughout the village. Even if Fengwu was sleeping like a dead pig, she still woke up. Fengwu, who had just woken up, was a little confused. The little bun was also disturbed by the noise outside. His cute little eyebrows wrinkled, and his little mouth made a little noise of protest. Fengwu put on her clothes and climbed to the top of the wall to take a look. She saw the village was covered in blood. She didn't know where the bandits came from, but they killed everyone they saw. The men in the village angrily resisted, but these bandits were all ruthless. In just a moment, the villagers were beaten to the point that they couldn't resist. These people are bad. Fengwu touched her little head and thought with certainty. Master said that people who practice martial arts should do their best to eliminate evil, but when there is a great disparity in strength, it is more important to save one's life. It is not worth it to lose one's life. Feng Wu carefully thought about the difference in strength between her and her enemy. She realized that she had only cultivated her body for a few days after she came here, and her internal strength was only at the first level. She was still no match for the people outside. After thinking about it, Feng Wu decided to listen to her master. If she can't beat them, she can hide, or run. In short, she can't sacrifice her little life in vain. So Feng Wu carried the little bun on her back. Her clothes and the little bun's clothes, and the necessities all swept into the space ring. Everything ready, Feng Wu was ready to find a chance to leave the village. Who knew that the door directly opened with a bang? Oh, my luck is really good. I didn't expect that in such a rural place, there would be such a top-quality goods. The bandit named He Si was very tall, his skin was dark, and the whole person exuded a strong aura. At a glance, it was clear that he had killed many people. Little beauty, go with brother, as long as you serve me well in the future, your little life, brother He Si, I will protect. Such a beautiful little beauty, when he was tired of playing with her, he could sell her for a good price. It was a pity to kill Qi. He Si drooled and stared at Feng Wu. For He Si, Feng Wu is now a fish on the chopping board. She can't run away. Life and death is not up to him. As for the little bun on Feng Wu's back, he was directly ignored by He Si. Feng Wu didn't understand what this person meant. Feng Wu intuitively didn't like this person. I don't like you. Feng Wu looked at He Si and said. She did not like this person and would not leave with him. This person was very bad. The way he stared at her was very annoying. Master said that men with this kind of eyes are not good men. If they dare to touch her, they can kill them directly. If they can't kill, they can run away. Master will back them up. He Si felt that this little girl had a problem with her brain. In this case, shouldn't she be scared and scream or beg for mercy? How can this girl be so calm and say that she doesn't like him? Who wants you to like, obediently serve lousy well, let lousy sell you for money, He Si disdainfully thought. Come on, little beauty, go with brother. He Si was too lazy to waste time with Feng Wu. He stretched out his big black hand and rushed to catch her. Feng Wu quickly took out a small sword from the space ring when He Si rushed to her. This small sword was the original owner's. Because she liked it very much, when she left Feng family, the original owner also took it out. This sword is very sharp and very light. It is very suitable for women to use. Feng Wu found this small sword a few days after giving birth. She liked it and took it directly with her. At this time, Feng Wu intuitively took the small sword in her hand and stabbed it unexpectedly. This sword did not have the slightest murderous intent, but it was not sloppy. It stabbed towards He Si's vital point. He Si is worthy of being a murderous robber. Although he did not expect such a little girl to dare to resist, with his combat experience, he still escaped this fatal blow. Unfortunately, although the first sword was avoided by him, the second sword was like moving clouds and flowing water, so that He Si could no longer escape and was directly cut in the neck. He Si's eyes widened. He didn't think that he would die in the hands of such a thin little girl. Although he had been prepared to die in this line, he didn't think that he would end his life in this way. No matter what He Si was thinking when he died, Feng Wu immediately closed the door after the 2 sneak attacks to prevent other robbers from breaking in again, and then left from the back door. She hid all the way and finally fled to the edge of the village. But outside the village, a lot of robbers gathered there, and it was impossible to go out. With Feng Wu's current skill, it is no problem for one to fight 3 or 5, but these 100 or 200 robbers, how can she be the opponent? In desperation, Feng Wu changed her route and went to the only dilapidated house in the village. The house that Feng Wu wants to go to is the only house in the village that can't be divided. Because the previous directors have died, the villagers said that the house is very strange, so no one wants to go to the house. Even children are warned by adults not to come here to play. Now the whole village is full of robbers, so she can't run. Fengwu decided to find a place to hide according to her master's words. The place to hide is of course this broken house that no one wants. First, the house is too dilapidated. It is estimated that no one except beggars will look at the house here. Second, there are relatively many places to hide near this house. Kill them, don't leave anyone alive. No, I beg you to let me go, don't touch me. My child, let go of my child. Around the sound of fighting, many women were pressed under the body of the robbers. Fengwu saw it in her eyes, but did not go forward to save them. Master said that you have to think clearly about what you do. You know you can't do it, but you still do it. That is a fool. Fengwu has never felt stupid, so in the case of no strength, she can only choose to pretend that she can't see, and then carefully go to the direction of the small broken house. She went to the courtyard of the small broken house. Sure enough, there is no one here. She looked around and finally chose to hide in the well. This well has already dried up, there is not a drop of water in it. This kind of place is suitable for hiding. Fengwu ran to the side of the well and directly used Qin Gong to jump into the well. After jumping into the well, Fengwu is a little stunned. She didn't expect that there is someone in the well. It is a little boy. Because the well is too dark, Fengwu can see clearly that the other party is a little boy because he cultivates internal strength. As for his appearance, Fengwu can't see clearly. Chapter 5. I didn't expect there to be someone as smart as me in this village. The little boy seemed surprised. Who are you? Fengwu wasn't familiar with the people in the village. During her confinement period, she had been lying in bed obediently. She had never seen anyone other than Auntie Lien. Fengwu was curious about this little boy. She stared at him without blinking. My name is Tank. My father was the best hunter in the village. After my father died, our house was taken over by my uncle's family. Since then, I've been living here alone. I've been eating and drinking in the village. You moved to our village a few months ago, didn't you? I saw you when you moved here. The little boy named Tank hadn't spoken for a long time. It was rare for him to see someone, so he started talking to himself. I've never seen you before. Fengwu frowned. Tank was about to speak when a cry came from the well. What's wrong? What's wrong? Where did that baby cry come from? Tank seemed to be frightened. This house had been rumored to be haunted in the village. If it wasn't for the fact that he had nowhere else to live, he wouldn't have moved here. He had lived here for a few months, and nothing had happened. He thought that the rumors were made up by the villagers. He didn't expect a ghost to appear, and a baby spirit at that. It was said that a baby spirit's ghost was scarier than an adult's, but he didn't know if it was true. Ah! Baby! Fengwu heard the baby crying and quickly put him down. She touched the baby's diaper and found that it was wet. Tank saw the baby in Fengwu's arms with the help of the weak moonlight. Thank God, he wasn't a ghost. Is this your little brother? I didn't see you with a child when you came here. Tank scratched his head, wondering if he remembered wrong. Maybe they had brought a baby with them when they came, but he didn't notice. This is my baby. Little Baozi was not her younger brother, but her son. Fengwu was very clear about this. You gave birth to her. How could she have a child at such a young age? Tian Cook couldn't understand. Yes. He nodded affirmatively. After that, Fengwu took the diapers and began to fret. She didn't know how to change diapers. Ever since the little bun was born, Auntie Lien had always taken good care of him. Other than feeding him, Fengwu played with the little bun. She didn't even need to change the little bun's urine. Now that Auntie Lien was gone, the problem came. Fengwu didn't know how to change diapers. What should they do? What are you doing? Hurry up and change it for him. It stinks. Tank couldn't stand it anymore and shouted. The well was filled with the smell of poop. Although the smell of a child's poop was not strong, it was still poop. Smelling it made people want to vomit. I don't know how. Fengwu said dejectedly. What should they do? Fengwu couldn't think of a way. She could only look at Tank and ask for help. I'll do it. Tank was speechless. She said it was her child, but she didn't even know how to change diapers. Fortunately, Tank had helped take care of her uncle's child, so she was very good at changing diapers. Soon, the diapers were changed. Fengwu threw the soiled diapers into her spatial ring. Do you know magic? Tank's eyes lit up. He looked at Fengwu with sparkling eyes. The people of this continent all yearned for magic. The status of a magician was very high in the Tianfeng continent. It was only because there were too few people with magic talent. The probability was 1 in 100,000. Moreover, those who had the talent might not be able to become a magician in the end. It should be known that there were good and bad talents. Most people, even if they had the talent to become a magician, didn't have too much potential. Most of the noble magicians lived in big cities. Why would they come to such a small place in the countryside? Therefore, when Tank saw Fengwu show her skills, he was very excited. A magician. He actually saw a living magician. It was incredible. Tian Ku was very excited. No, I don't have magic talent. Fengwu said honestly. About the original body's talent, Fengwu had heard from Aunt Lien that she had no talent for magic and no talent for swordsmanship. She was a good-for-nothing. Of course, Aunt Lien wouldn't say it so bluntly. She said it very tactfully. However, when Fengwu went down the mountain before, she heard the people at the foot of the mountain call those who didn't have the talent as good-for-nothings. Therefore, she understood the meaning of these two words. Then how did you make the diaper disappear? Tank was a little disappointed, but then he asked with interest. A spatial tool. Fengwu only answered with 4 words. Xiaoya said that spatial rings were very precious among humans and couldn't be told to others casually. If someone asked, she just had to say that it was a spatial tool. Although there were very few spatial rings, there were still many spatial tools. These magic tools were all made by spatial magicians. Some were a few cubic meters in size, while the largest was only a few dozen cubic meters. Moreover, these spatial magic tools all had a lifespan. Some could only be used for 1 year, some for 2 or 3 years, and the better ones could be used for 10 or 20 years. Those magic tools couldn't be used forever like this spatial ring. Moreover, the space inside was very large. The spatial ring that Xiaoya gave Fengwu had many things hidden in its previous owner, but Fengwu didn't have time to see what those things were. So it's a spatial tool. How rich. When Fengwu mentioned spatial tools, Tank understood. This kind of magic tool was widely used in the Heavenly Wind continent. Even the town's merchants would buy them. The cheapest spatial tool could be bought for 10 gold coins. It was 5 cubic meters in size and could be used for a year. So when he heard Fengwu say that it was a spatial tool, Tank wasn't surprised. The two of them whispered a few words to each other, and then stopped talking. The fighting outside was still going on, and they were afraid that if they were too loud, they would attract the attention of the people outside. After another half an hour, the fighting outside gradually quieted down. It seemed that the massacre was coming to an end. Sure enough, the fighting became quieter and quieter until they couldn't hear anything anymore. The small hut they were in had been searched by some people, but when they saw that there was nothing inside, they left cursing and swearing. Not long after that person left, the world outside the well was covered in flames. Fengwu and Tank didn't dare to leave the bottom of the well. The two of them hid at the bottom of the well and didn't even dare to speak, afraid that a bandit would suddenly appear and overhear their conversation. If that happened, it would be hard to say whether or not they would be able to keep their lives. Time passed by minute by minute. Running for their lives and mentally exhausted, the two of them were so hungry that their stomachs were growling. Fengwu rubbed her stomach pitifully. Aunt Lian's delicious food had all been eaten, and she was very hungry. Chapter 6. Blinking her eyes, Fengwu suddenly remembered that she still had milk fruits to eat. Xiao Yu had helped little Baozi pick a lot of milk fruits. Thinking of this, Fengwu narrowed her eyes and smiled. She used her mental power to connect with her spatial ring, and 1 or 2 milk fruits appeared in Fengwu's hand. Fengwu generously gave a milk fruit to Tank. Now that the two of them were both at the bottom of the well, Fengwu naturally wouldn't be stingy. Tank blushed as he took it. Fortunately, the bottom of the well was very dark. Other than the outline of a person, even his skin color couldn't be seen clearly, let alone whether he was blushing or not. Tank blushed and softly thanked her. He took a bite, and the juice from the fruit almost made Tank choke. What kind of fruit is this? It's so juicy. There's also a hint of milk taste. I've never eaten it before. It's probably a high-end fruit that only people in the city eat. Tank found an excuse and didn't think too much about it. He sucked the juice from the milk fruit in big mouthfuls, and even licked his hands clean. The night passed like this. The next day, when the first ray of sunlight shone on the bottom of the well, Fengwu carefully climbed out of the well. The surrounding houses had been turned into ruins, and even the ground was dyed red. Fengwu carried little Baozi to the edge of the well. Looking at the unfamiliar village, she felt a little upset. Not long after Fengwu came up, Tank also climbed up with the rope that held the bucket. Looking at the village that had become hell on earth, Tank's feelings in his heart were much stronger than Fengwu's. After all, this village was where he grew up. Xiao Wu, do you have anywhere you want to go? Although Tank was precocious, he was only a 6-year-old child. In the blink of an eye, all the people he was familiar with had died. Fengwu had become the only person he was familiar with. Naturally, he began to tolerate her. Fengwu thought about it and shook her head. Her house had been burned down, and she had no home left. She didn't know where to go. Should she go find Auntie Lian? But where does Auntie Lian live? She didn't know. Xiao Wu, why don't you come with me? I have an aunt who lives in Central City. Let's go find her together. My aunt is different from my uncle's family. She loves me very much. Thinking of his aunt who loved him dearly, Tank wanted to cry. Ever since his father died, he had been treated with disdain by his uncle's family. Originally, he thought that when he grew up, he would definitely take back the land and house that his uncle's family had taken away. He didn't expect that before he grew up, his uncle's family would all die. He didn't even get to take revenge. After suddenly losing his life goal, Tank didn't know what to do in the future. However, the only person he could rely on right now was his aunt. Thinking of how much his aunt loved him, Tank believed that his aunt wouldn't dislike him like his uncle's family. Go with Tank. That seemed good. Fengwu thought that since she didn't know where to go, she agreed. Fengwu took the 2 steamed buns and left the village where she had lived for several months. As for where the central city that Tank mentioned was, whether it was Fengwu or Tank, they had no idea. Tank only knew that the central city was very far and that it would take a long time to get there by carriage. Fengwu didn't even know what the central city was because ever since she came to this world, the furthest she went was the forest not far away. How do we get to the central city? Fengwu lowered her head and asked Tank. I don't know. I only know that it's very, very far from here. Tank looked at Fengwu carefully. He was afraid that Fengwu would refuse to take him or leave him alone because it was too far. Fortunately, Fengwu didn't think too much about it. Then what should we do? Fengwu asked again. Fengwu, who had always been simple-minded, didn't think about how irresponsible it was to ask a child about everything. Fenwu's education since she was a child taught her to ask if she didn't understand something. She couldn't pretend that she understood. Why don't we go to the nearest city first, get a map, and then set off? Fortunately, Tank was more reliable. He thought of a solution in an instant. Tank also understood that this strange sister Xiao Wu was completely unreliable. It was hard to say who would take care of who in the future. Tank was completely right. Ever since the two of them set off, Fenwu had been following Tank all the way. When Fenwu was hungry, she would hunt for pheasants or hares. After she came back from hunting, the job of cooking fell to Tank. Ever since Fenwu made a dark cuisine that could kill people with poison, Tank didn't let Fenwu cook anymore. The reason was that he didn't want to die young before meeting his aunt. Fenwu lowered her head and stepped back. Since then, she didn't compete with Tank for the job of cooking. Tank not only took over the job of cooking, he even took care of little Baozi's diapers. Tank had completely taken over the job of changing diapers. Fenwu was only responsible for feeding little Baozi half a milk berry when he was hungry. 3 days later, the two of them arrived at the town closest to the village. After Tank asked Fenwu how much money she had, they asked for a room at the most convenient inn. The two of them took a good bath. Little Baozi was also given a good bath by Tank. The three of them had been gone for 3 days, and there was no place to take a bath. There were often people passing by the river, and little Baozi was too small. It was impossible to put him in the river directly. It wasn't easy to find a place to take a bath. Fenwu and Tank naturally had to take a good bath. They asked the lady boss to help boil 2 buckets of hot water. The three of them took a bath happily, ate the food prepared by the inn, and then had a good sleep. When Fenwu went out, she took all the clothes she had, but Tank didn't bring any change of clothes. Therefore, Fenwu asked the lady boss to help Tank prepare a few boys' clothes. The lady boss was a good person. Because she had a son who was older than Tank, she had a lot of boys' clothes at home. Hearing that the siblings had escaped from the village, the lady boss directly gave all her son's old clothes to Tank. Fenwu sincerely thanked the lady boss. Even Tank blushed and thanked the lady boss. The news of Tank's village being slaughtered by bandits had spread to the town. The lady boss knew that Tank and Fenwu were survivors of the village, so she was very sympathetic. She even prepared a bigger meal for them than for others. Fenwu felt that the lady boss was a good person, so she asked the lady boss how to get to the central city. The lady boss only said that Yang City was very far, and it would take them at least 1 or 2 years to get to the central city. Chapter 7. 1 or 2 years. Fenwu blinked her eyes. It would take that long. Luckily, the lady boss said that there was a beast carriage in town, but it was a little expensive. Is there no shortcut to get there? Fenwu knew that money could buy food, so she was reluctant to spend money on a carriage. Shortcut. The lady boss thought for a moment, then frowned. It's not that there isn't a shortcut, follow me. The lady boss led Fenwu to the entrance of the inn and pointed to a mountain in the distance. Do you see that? That's the Magic Beast Mountain Range, where all the magic beasts live. As long as you pass through this mountain, you'll reach Onlua City. Once you reach Onlua City, you can take a flying beast carriage there. It only costs 20 gold coins per person to get to Central City. Although that's the shortcut, the mountain is filled with magic beasts and is very dangerous. If you have the money, you can find a good mercenary group and have them escort you there. If it's just you and your brother, don't be stupid. Every year, many people die on that mountain. The warm-hearted lady boss persuaded Fenwu for a long time. No matter what the lady boss said, Fenwu obediently listened. However, no one could guess what she was thinking. So there really was a shortcut, Fenwu thought as she listened to the lady boss's words. In her heart, she was thinking about how to save money to get to Central City. Auntie Lien said that she had 20 gold coins for living expenses every month. She hadn't even started spending this month's money. A few months ago, Auntie Lien had been saving money to spend. Now, she had 60 gold coins in her crystal card, which was more than enough to pay for the carriage. After a quarter of an hour, the lady boss finally finished persuading her. Fengwu asked the lady boss where she could buy a map of the continent. The Heavenly Wind continent was very big, and there were countless large and small countries on the continent. Every country had their own map, and there was also a map of the entire continent. However, it was inconvenient to buy one. After consulting the lady boss, Fengwu chose to buy a map of the entire continent. Fengwu also wanted to save money, but Central City didn't belong to any country. They were currently in an ancient eastern country. Most of the people in this country had black hair and black eyes. Occasionally, there would be people with different hair colors. They were either foreigners from other countries or mixed blood. Central City was located in the center of the continent. According to legends, it was a city built by God. It didn't belong to any country, and was also not controlled by any country. Central City was the headquarters of the temple. In the legends of the Heavenly Wind continent, the people of the temple were all chosen by God. For the sake of the continent's peace, they worked hard to fight against the demons of other worlds. They had the power bestowed upon them by God, and every warrior of the temple was respected by the people. In Central City, other than the temple, the most famous school was the Notre Dame du Starlight. It was the continent's largest dual cultivation school of magic and martial arts. There were the most talented magicians and the most talented swordsmen. Every graduate of the Notre Dame du Starlight could become a member of the temple as long as they passed the examination of the Holy Court. To be able to become a member of the temple was a matter of great honor to everyone. Fengwu wanted to bring Tank to Central City, so she had to buy a map that could be used by the entire continent. Only then would she be able to calculate the most time and cost-effective route. Under the lady boss's guidance, Fengwu went to a shop that specialized in miscellaneous goods, and spent 5 gold coins to buy a map of the continent. After leaving the shop, Fengwu looked at the map in her hand and pursed her lips. 5 gold coins. She could buy a lot of meat buns. Meat buns were only 2 copper coins each. 5 gold coins could last her for a very long time. Although her heart ached for the gold coins, Fengwu quickly got over it. Fengwu had always been very open-minded, and she would not dwell on any worries for too long. When are we leaving? Tank excitedly ran circles around Fengwu. The little bun was placed on the bed by Fengwu, and she let him play by himself. Ever since he was born, apart from being picky with his food, he was a very worry-free child. We'll leave tomorrow after we buy some food. Fengwu had already calculated the shortest route using the map. Just as the lady boss had said, the only way to save time and money was through the Magic Beast Mountain Range. Fengwu finally decided to take the route through the Magic Beast Mountain Range, and she did not intend to hire mercenaries to protect them. Firstly, she had the ability to protect herself. Secondly, mercenaries were too expensive. Fengwu expressed that she did not have the money. She could not afford to hurt a poor child. Alright, then we'll go hire a beast carriage tomorrow morning. Tank thought about how he had never ridden a beast carriage before, and became excited just thinking about it. We won't hire a beast carriage. We'll go through the mountain in the back. Fengwu took out a large meat bun and took a bite. Fengwu found that the meat buns in the shop next door were large and fragrant, especially to her taste. So Fengwu bought a lot of meat buns and stored them in her interspatial ring, so that she could eat them whenever she was hungry. Tank stared blankly for a moment, then began to think about which mountain Fengwu was talking about. After thinking for a few seconds, Tank understood and cried out, "No, that mountain is full of magical beasts. With just the 2 of us, the magical beasts won't even be enough to fill the gaps between our teeth." He was only 6 years old, okay? That idiot Fengwu was basically going to commit suicide. He hadn't lived enough yet, okay? Not just the two of us, there's also the baby. Fengwu pointed at little Baozi, who was spitting bubbles on the bed. Seeing that Tank did not include little Baozi in the group, Fengwu expressed her displeasure. Little Baozi seemed to sense that they were talking about him. He opened his round eyes and looked at Fengwu and Tank, as if asking what they were doing. Alright, even if we include the baby, do you think that with just the three of us, we can pass through the magical beast forest? Tank was speechless. At this time, she still had the energy to care about this. Tank had always felt that he was a mature person. Although he was younger than Fengwu, he was more mature than Fengwu. In the past few days, little Baozi Tank had completely seen through the Fengwu girl's nature. Fengwu's nature could be described in one word, and that was stupidity. Now, his evaluation of Fengwu had to change. Not only was she stupidity, but she was also stupid. Tank puffed up his face and glared at Fengwu angrily. This was the first time that Tank, who had always been very mature, was acting like a child. Don't worry, I'll protect you and the baby. Fengwu promised seriously. Tank lowered his head dejectedly. After a few days of trust, little Baozi already knew that although Tank mostly asked for his opinion, when she decided on something, she would definitely do it. No matter what happened, she would not change her decision. In a way, Fengwu was very stubborn. Alright, do as you wish. Tank was too lazy to say anything more. She didn't even care about the lives of the mother and child. He only had one life, so what could he use to protest against Fengwu? Thus, the three of them happily determined the direction my ass. Chapter 8. The next day, Fengwu took Tank, Steamed Bun, and Little Bun to check out of the hotel. She then ran to the steamed bun cellar and bought several hundred meat buns, 200 steamed buns, and a large pile of cooked corn. She then went to the grocery store to buy many seasonings, as well as several hundred beast-skin water bags. She bought over 100 bags of rice, as well as some pots and pans for the kitchen. She also bought a large tent, a bed and blankets, as well as a number of miscellaneous items. Fengwu's interspatial ring was very large, and could store many things. She spent less than 5 gold coins to buy such a large pile of things. Tank followed behind Fengwu. Seeing Fengwu's crazy buying manner, he felt as if he didn't recognize Fengwu anymore. Before today, she had clearly been a miser. When it came to money, she would definitely be very careful. How had she changed after just one night of sleep? Was it because Fengwu had changed too quickly, or was it because the world had changed too quickly? Little Bun Tank expressed that he didn't understand at all. He begged for help, for an explanation, for all sorts of things. After buying everything, Fengwu carried Little Bun on her back, with Tank following behind her. One big hand and two small hands holding a map, they set off towards the mountain range of magical beasts. The mountain range of magical beasts was one of the largest mountain ranges in the ancient eastern country. It covered an extremely large area. After passing through the mountain range of magical beasts, it didn't take long for them to reach the border city of Anlua City. Fengwu led Tank into the mountain range of magical beasts. Many of the magical beasts that lived in the outer regions of the mountain range of magical beasts were relatively weak. The universal map that Fengwu had bought didn't have many routes in the mountain range of magical beasts. Apart from the routes into the mountains, the routes within the mountain range of magical beasts weren't marked out. Perhaps it was because the magical beasts inside were too strong, so no one had the ability to draw out a complete map of the mountain range of magical beasts. And those who had the ability wouldn't have spent the time to draw out a map. Look, why are there two children? Within a small mercenary group that was hunting for low-level magical beasts in the outskirts of the mountain range of magical beasts, one of them discovered a large group of two. These people obviously ignored Little Bun who was behind Fengwu. Little Bun yawned behind Fengwu. The sun was so comfortable, he wanted to sleep. It looks like they want to go into the mountains. They don't want to live anymore. Kids nowadays are so reckless. I wonder which family they are from. Someone sighed. Hey, little girl, little brother, don't go inside, it's very dangerous. A kind-hearted female mercenary couldn't bear to see such a young child buried in the mouth of the demon mountain, so she cried out. Hey! Behind them, a few kind-hearted people continued to call out. It was a pity that Funwu didn't know that they were calling out to her. And although Tank knew, Funwu had already decided to pass through this mountain range. Moreover, he didn't know those people, so he didn't pay much attention to them. The kind-hearted mercenaries called out a few times, and not long after, Funwu and Tank's small figures disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. What's wrong with those two children? Aren't they looking for death? A female mercenary frowned. Why do you care what they do? They're not your children. If they want to die, we won't stop them. But they. The female mercenary wanted to say something, but was interrupted by the leader of their mercenary group. All right, let's not talk about it anymore. We've already warned them. We've already done our best, the tall and sturdy captain said. Thus, no one said another word. The members of the small mercenary group began to seriously search for traces of low-level magical beasts. 3 months later. Standing at the gate of Onloa City, Tank didn't dare to believe that he had left the legendary mountain range of magical beasts just like that. In this 3 months, Tank discovered that Funwu was even more miraculous than he had imagined. Those vicious magical beasts actually didn't attack Funwu. Moreover, Funwu also understood the language of beasts. When she didn't know the way, she would ask the magical beasts for directions. He didn't know what was wrong with those magical beasts, but they actually helped Funwu point the way. Some of the more idle ones would even lead them for a while. The peaceful coexistence between human beings and demon beasts had broken Tian Ke's understanding for 6 years since she was born. It turned out that magical beasts also had times when they didn't attack humans. He had always thought that the relationship between humans and magical beasts was a mutual hunting relationship. Humans hunted magical beasts in exchange for money. Magical beasts' magic cores were also essential materials for making enchanted weapons. Magical beasts, on the other hand, could increase their strength by eating human flesh. Because of this, the relationship between humans and magical beasts could never be considered friendly. This peaceful scene naturally had a huge impact on Tank. Tank had once suspected that Funwu was a legendary beastmaster. The so-called beastmaster referred to people who possessed some kind of special talent, and used certain methods to train magical beasts and make them fight for them. Under normal circumstances, if a human wanted to form a contract with a magical beast, there were 2 ways. The first way was for the magical beast to take the initiative to form a contract with you. This kind of contract was mostly equal. Moreover, before the contract was formed, you had to first defeat the magical beast you wanted to form a contract with. If you couldn't suppress the magical beast in terms of strength, why would it form a contract with you? The second way was for the beastmaster to train the magical beast first, and then for the human to form a master-servant contract. Of these 2 methods, the first was naturally the best. It should be for the magical beast that had been trained by the beastmaster. The suppression on the magical beast's strength was greater, and the magical beast's strength couldn't exceed its master's. On the other hand, a contract of equal status didn't have such restrictions, and was better for the magical beast's growth. Tank guessed that Funwu was a beastmaster, and immediately asked Funwu for confirmation. Funwu shook her head, saying no. Tank didn't really believe her. However, after interacting with Funwu for so long, he knew that Funwu wouldn't lie, unless she didn't want to answer. If she answered, then her answer would definitely be true. Tank couldn't understand why Funwu was so popular with the magical beasts, but he couldn't be bothered to think about it. Onloa City was located at the border between the ancient eastern country and the central city. It was one of the largest cities in the ancient eastern country. There were many merchants coming and going here, and the city was very prosperous. After seeing Onluo City, the two country bumpkins Fenwu and Tank realized that the small town that they had thought to be very grand was actually so small. Look at the houses, the carriages, the clothes, the food they were selling, whoa. As expected of Onluo City. Tank exclaimed. Beautiful. Fenwu carried Little Bun on her back. Like Tank, she also felt that the city was very beautiful. The furthest Sky Blue had ever been to was a small town at the foot of Mount Yuehua. She had never seen such a beautiful city. Che, country bumpkins, don't block the way. You really haven't seen the world, what a disgrace. Fenwu and Tank turned around upon hearing the voice, only to see a blue-haired girl with her arms crossed, looking at Fenwu and Tank with disdain. It was obvious that those words had come from this girl's mouth. Ugly woman, you're the country bumpkin. Your whole family are country bumpkins. Tank's face turned red, glaring angrily at the blue-haired girl. Damn brat, what nonsense are you spouting? How dare you speak to me like that? Do you know who I am? The girl was so angry that her ample chest heaved up and down. The nearby men who were watching the show couldn't help but drool as they looked at the beauty in front of them. Chapter 9. The appearance of the blue-haired girl was obviously not from the ancient Eastern countries, and it was unlikely that she was a mixed blood, so this girl could only be from other countries. Looking at her gorgeous dress, she had a string of expensive pearl necklace around her neck, a gold bracelet inlaid with gems on her hand, and the hair band in her hair was obviously made of money. The belt on her waist was a space accessory, and this dress made people feel a few words. I'm a local tyrant, I'm not to be trifled with. The onlookers around knew that the two siblings were going to be unlucky. Because of some speculations about the girl's identity, no one dared to stand out and meddle in other people's business. They could only express heartfelt sympathy for the siblings. Don't you know who you are? Fenwu blinked and asked doubtfully. This person was really strange, asking others who she was. If even she didn't know this question, then it was even more impossible for her and Tank to know. Pooh! There was a muffled laughter all around, and Tank also laughed loudly on the side. He didn't expect Fenwu to be so awesome. He thought that with her being so dull, she would definitely not quarrel. Courting death. Alice couldn't imagine that the two bumpkins would dare to ridicule her. How could Alice, who had always thought highly of herself, stand this? Alice, who had never been bullied by anyone, directly drew her staff from the space belt, and a fiery red hair staff appeared in Alice's hand. It's a magician, this girl is actually a noble magician. The people around exclaimed. God! That pair of siblings actually dared to offend a magician. Someone said. Now that pair of siblings are dead. No one saw the combination of Fenwu and Tank. You want to fight? Fenwu looked puzzled at the other party's action of drawing her staff. Did she want to fight? Nonsense, if you kneel down and beg for mercy now, this young lady may be merciful and forgive you once. Alice arrogantly pointed her staff at Fenwu, and the exclamations all around made her feel a sense of superiority. He looked at Fenwu and Tank as if he was looking at two ants. In her mind, the fact that she was willing to give them a chance to admit their mistakes was already a huge favor. This pair of country bumpkin siblings should be deeply grateful and kneel on the ground, kowtowing to her and admitting their mistakes. Tank looked at Fenwu nervously. He didn't know how powerful Fenwu was, but she was a high and mighty magician. If he had known that this woman was so powerful, he wouldn't have talked back. It wouldn't hurt him to let her say a few words. Now, not only was he unlucky, but he had also implicated Fenwu and Little Bun. For the first time, Tank felt regret in his young heart. One had to know that because of the scarcity of magicians in the Heavenly Wind continent, the status of magicians was much higher than that of ordinary people. Some high-level magicians would even be directly conferred the title of nobility. They didn't even need to give anything, and only needed to stand on the side of the empire when needed. Now, there was such a magician standing in front of them. Although they didn't know how high her level was, just her identity as a magician was enough to frighten them. Fengwu heard Alice's words and frowned. "You mean, you want to fight with me?" Master said not to use martial arts to bully ordinary people, unless the other party caused trouble first. Now that this unknown girl took out her weapon and challenged her, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Fengwu looked at the staff in Alice's hand, puzzled. "Fight. You think you're worthy of saying these 2 words?" Alice sneered disdainfully. She was just a country bumpkin, yet she said she wanted to fight with her. She really didn't know what was good for her. Who did she think she was to say these 2 words in front of her, a noble magician? Then, should we fight or not? The people here were really not straightforward. Fengwu pursed her lips, unhappy. Then, should we fight or not? You're courting death. Alice had never seen someone so eager to be beaten up. She was furious. She felt that she had been underestimated. Chanting an incomprehensible incantation, Alice began to circulate the magic in her body, wanting to cast a fireball spell to make the other party suffer. Fengwu felt that as the other party chanted, the energy fluctuations on her body became stronger and stronger, as if preparing to explode. Fengwu didn't even bother to draw her weapon. Using the windward willow leaf steps, she instantly rushed forward and pointed her finger at a certain acupuncture point on the other party's body. Her chanting was interrupted, and her body was immobilized. Alice's face flushed red, and she looked at Fengwu in disbelief. "How is this possible? How did you do it?" Alice couldn't believe that the country bumpkin standing in front of her could resolve her attack so easily. She was completely defeated by the other party. Should she be glad now? Although fighting wasn't forbidden in Onloa City, it was forbidden to cripple and kill. "I won." Fengwu looked at Alice with a serious face and announced the final result. "Let go of me, what do you want? I am the daughter of the president of the Amuse Chamber of Commerce. If you touch me, my father will never let you go." Now that she had fallen into the hands of Fengwu, in order to not be humiliated by the other party, Alice could only bring up her father, hoping to scare the other party away in the name of her father. Unfortunately, Alice was completely wrong. For a country bumpkin like Fengwu, who had never seen the world, what president of the Amuse Chamber of Commerce? The Fengwu girl expressed that she didn't know and didn't know. She's actually the daughter of the president of the Amuse Chamber of Commerce, no wonder. A middle-aged woman stood outside the crowd with an expression of understanding. "Shoo! What nonsense are you talking about? Do you want to die?" The man beside the woman quickly pulled her back, not allowing her to speak nonsense. The woman seemed to have only just reacted and hurriedly looked around. Seeing that the surrounding people were discussing the Amuse Chamber of Commerce and no one had noticed her, she heaved a sigh of relief. One had to know that the Amuse Chamber of Commerce was the largest chamber of commerce in the Yenido country. Even in the ancient Eastern countries, they had business dealings with them and the money they earned was uncountable. When the surrounding onlookers heard that the girl was from the Amuse Chamber of Commerce and was the president's daughter, they knew that the siblings were in big trouble. "Let's go." Unexpectedly, Fengwu didn't care about Alice at all and directly pulled Tank forward. "Hey! Don't go, quickly let me go. Was there a mistake? Shouldn't she confess her mistakes in fear and trepidation and then ask for her forgiveness? She actually left just like that." Not only Alice, but the surrounding onlookers also couldn't understand what this girl was thinking. "The acupoints will be unlocked by themselves in an hour." After saying this, the girl left without looking back. She didn't even turn back, even though the unlucky Alice was screaming until her throat was about to break. Chapter 10. They inquired about the location of the carriage shop and followed the direction pointed out by the kind man. Soon, they arrived at the carriage shop. The so-called flying beast carriage was a huge flying beast that served as a means of transportation. On the back of the flying beast, there would be a house built. The house was divided into 2 floors, and each floor had 10 rooms. The rooms were divided into single rooms, double rooms, triple rooms, quadruple rooms, and large bunk beds. A bunk room could sleep about 10 people. 20 gold coins was just enough to buy a bunk room ticket. They bought 2 bunk room tickets. Fengwu carried Little Bun on her back and took Tank and Big Bun on the flying beast carriage. Wow, this flying beast is so big. It's even carrying a house on its back. Tank pointed at the huge flying beast standing on the open ground excitedly. He was very excited. When he was in the village, he had heard about this kind of flying beast carriage in the world. He also thought that he would be a great swordsman and travel to various countries in the world for adventures. Tank didn't expect that before he grew up, he would be sitting on a flying beast carriage. It was like a dream. Tank pinched his arm stupidly. The pain from his hand made him sure that he wasn't dreaming. He couldn't stop giggling. Those who are going to the central city, give me your number plates. Hurry up and get on the carriage. The staff of the carriage shop put down a ladder from the flying beast carriage and shouted. Fengwu and Tianku quickly climbed up the ladder. As soon as they reached the top, they saw the person who shouted just now standing in front of them. Both of you are going to the central city. Show me your number plates first. The staff appeared in front of them with a professional smile. We are going to the central city. These are our number plates. Fengwu handed over the 2 number plates that she had spent 40 gold coins on. The number plates were like the tickets in the future. One had to get on the carriage with the number plates. Without the number plates, one couldn't take the flying beast carriage. After checking the number plates, the staff made way for Fengwu and Tank to rest in their rooms. However, before they left, the staff kindly reminded Fengwu that there was no distinction between men and women in the bunk. If they had the money, it would be better to buy a double number plate. Fengwu thanked the kind staff and led Tank to the room she had booked. When the 2 of them entered the room, the 4 men who were chatting in the room all stopped talking and stared blankly at the 2 of them who shouldn't be in the room. Did they see wrongly? How could a girl be willing to live in such a large shared bed? Because there was no distinction between men and women, girls wouldn't buy this kind of number plate. Only mercenaries like them would stay in this kind of place. No girls would sleep in this kind of place. Did you go to the wrong room? A middle-aged man dressed like a mercenary asked with uncertainty. He smiled at Fengwu as he spoke. Although this man had a long scar on his face and his smile looked even scarier, he still tried to make himself look kind so that he wouldn't scare the little lowly. Stop smiling. You look even scarier when you smile. Don't scare these children. Another middle-aged mercenary who was about the same age as the man who spoke said with a smile. That's right. The last person agreed. We didn't go to the wrong room. Fengwu was very sure that the number plate she saw at the door was the number on her number plate. Afraid that these people wouldn't believe them, Fengwu specially showed her number plate to them. When Tank saw this, he also took out his number plate. He was afraid that these people wouldn't believe them and would chase them away. They took the number plates of the 2 little guys and looked at them. It was really this room. The 3 of them exchanged glances. Their eyes were filled with doubt. It really is this room. Little girl, you can sleep in the corner. Little brother will sleep next to you. It's more convenient this way. The one who spoke was the middle-aged man with a scar on his face. This arrangement was also kind. Not all men were as decent as the 3 of them. What if they met those with bad intentions? Yes, you 2 sleep in the corner. The 3 of us will lean against this little brother and sleep next to him. This way, we can block the others. The middle-aged man who laughed at the scarred man immediately said. This arrangement is good. The 3rd person nodded. Tank nodded, indicating that he agreed. These three people didn't seem to be bad people. It was best to let the idiot Fengwu sleep inside. Fengwu was a girl. How could she lean on those men to sleep? Fengwu also agreed. Although she didn't know these three people, Fengwu felt the goodwill from these three people. The people who bought the number plates came to this room one after another. Most of them were curious that a little loli would appear in this room. Some even deliberately looked for Fengwu and Tank to chat. Of course, there were also those with bad intentions. They wanted to choose a bed close to Fengwu and take advantage of her. However, the few spots next to Fengwu had already been occupied by Tank and the three middle-aged mercenaries. Those who wanted to do bad things couldn't find a good spot and couldn't think of any other way. Your name is Fengwu, and your name is Tianku. Are you brother and sister? A curious person inquired about the names of the elder and the younger one, and asked his own question. No, we're friends. Fengwu shook her little head. This question wasn't important, so Fengwu didn't hide it and answered the other party. Then are you two going to the central city to register at the Notre Dame du Starlight? Another person asked. No, Tank's aunt lives in the central city. We're going to look for Tank's aunt together, Fengwu answered obediently. Just like that, Fengwu would answer all the questions that she felt were unimportant. For example, where they came from, who was in her family, and so on. Fengwu didn't answer. It wasn't that Fengwu felt that she couldn't answer these questions, but that she didn't know the answer herself. She didn't have the memories of the past Fengwu, so she couldn't answer these questions. It was because Fengwu was simply too obedient. She would obediently answer whatever he asked her. Although there was no smile on her face, she would always answer his questions seriously. When she pretended to be serious, she was so adorable. The group of men were almost melted by Fengwu's cuteness. They didn't notice that among them, there was a perverted gaze that was secretly sizing up Fengwu. He didn't miss a single inch of her from head to toe. Just as the crowd was chatting enthusiastically around Fengwu, the stench of feces suddenly wafted in the air. Who's taking a dump here? The crowd covered their noses and looked for the culprit. Yeah, it's too smelly. Damn, who's this? It's so disgusting. Wah. Ah. A baby's cry suddenly echoed in the room. Where did this baby come from? Someone started looking for the source of the cry. Did someone bring a baby in? Why didn't I notice? I didn't see it either. Ah. It's the baby who took a dump. Fengwu girl, who was slow to react, quickly put the baby down from her back. Chapter 11. One adult and one child worked together, but the sudden appearance of little Baozi caught everyone off guard. Of course, other than the three middle-aged mercenaries who first recognized Fengwu, the three of them all noticed that little Baozi was carrying little Baozi on her back. The others came later, and because of the angle, they didn't notice Fengwu's back. Is this child your little brother? Someone couldn't help but ask. Fengwu handed the diaper to Tank and didn't bother with it. After all, Tank was better at changing the diaper than she was. No, it's my son. Fengwu answered seriously. Fengwu had a special insistence on her identity as little Baozi's mother. It was probably because little Baozi was the closest person to Fengwu after she came to this world, aside from Auntie Lian. Moreover, they were blood-related, so Fengwu didn't like others to treat little Baozi as her little brother. Son. Now, even the three middle-aged mercenaries who first knew of little Baozi's existence couldn't remain calm. Such a small loli was actually a mother. Who would believe this? Thus, the room's cries of surprise almost tore the roof off. Hey, can you guys be quiet? It's too noisy. A fiery red-haired youth walked into the room empty-handed. The youth's hair was fiery red, and his eyes were also red. In addition, he was wearing a red shirt and pants. His entire person gave off the feeling of a fireball. This young man, who was dressed like a fireball, was unexpectedly handsome. His skin was fair, his height was about 1.7 meters, and his facial features were very delicate. In short, this was a beautiful youth. "Who are you?" Everyone was angry. Who was this kid? Didn't he know that it was impolite to casually barge into other people's rooms? "Of course I'm a guest of this room. Who else do you think I am?" He casually looked around the room. Ajur wrinkled his delicate eyebrows. He really didn't like the smell in the room. These people couldn't be defecating in the room, right? How unruly. Ajur casually glanced at the people in the room. A girl with black hair and black eyes, as cute as a doll, entered his sight. This girl was very cute. She was wearing a long white dress, and her whole person gave people a kind of delicate and cute feeling. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was, why was there a girl in the bunk? If it wasn't for the fact that he was absolutely certain that no one knew about his route, he would have thought that this girl had specifically come to this shared room to block him. In order to get rid of those annoying women, he didn't even dare to book a single room. He was afraid that his whereabouts would be discovered. He had already done so much. If someone could still find him, then he could only admit defeat. "You live here too?" Everyone didn't quite believe it. This kid had the temperament of a young master. No matter how they looked at it, he didn't look like someone who would sleep in a shared bed. "What? Can't I stay here?" Ajur frowned unhappily. No one said anything else. Actually, where this brat lived had nothing to do with them. The main thing was that this brat's personality was too annoying, making people want to beat him up. "Hey! Woman, why are you in this room?" Ajur questioned very impolitely. It didn't matter if this fellow was one of those women who wanted to attract his attention. As long as it was a woman, he would hate it. In short, he hated female creatures. They were the most troublesome creatures in the world. Fengwu took out her number plate and directly placed it in the palm of her hand for the other party to see. Fengwu thought that the other party misunderstood that she had walked into the wrong room, so she obediently showed her number plate to the other party. Ajur saw the other party's actions and became angry. What was the meaning of this fellow? He didn't even know how to reply to a question. "You don't know how to speak, do you? I asked you to answer me, why did you show me your number plate?" Fengwu raised her head in confusion. She thought that the other party would understand. Just now, when those uncles saw her number plate, they all understood. This person was really stupid. He couldn't even understand such a simple thing. What kind of look is that? He didn't see wrongly, right? This woman was treating him as an idiot. This made Ajur very angry. He didn't see the other party chanting, but a fireball flew towards Fengwu. Ajur had never been the kind of person who believed that he wouldn't hit a woman. His creed was that he would teach anyone who recognized him a lesson, regardless of gender. Now, Fengwu's gaze made Ajur think that she was provoking him. Although he couldn't kill her like this, he still had to teach her a lesson. The fireball's speed was very fast. It was about to hit Fengwu's body. Because Ajur's actions were too fast, it was too late for the others to save her. They could only watch as such a beautiful girl was miserably kissed by the fireball. Just when everyone thought that Fengwu girl was doomed, a short sword appeared in Fengwu's hand unexpectedly. The short sword was unsheathed and slashed towards the center of the fireball. The fireball actually dissipated in the air just like that. All of this happened in just a few seconds. The two of them, who were about the same age, were actually hidden experts. No one would have thought that such a cute girl would actually have such fighting strength. She was able to extinguish the fireball with a single slash. Bad guy. You bad guy, you actually bullied Xiao Wu. After putting Little Bun on the bed, Tank rushed towards Ajur. Although he knew that he couldn't beat the other party dared to make a move on Fengwu. This made Tank feel that the other party was a big bad guy, unforgivable. Moreover, Fengwu was so silly, he must protect Fengwu. Tank was only a child, so Ajur didn't bicker with a child. When Tank rushed over, he only felt that he hit a layer of something soft and was stopped a meter away from the person. Not bad, you're quite strong. With this kind of strength, do you want to take the entrance exam to Notre Dame du Starlight? Ajur stroked his smooth chin, a trace of interest in the girl in front of him. As for Tank, who kept trying to attack him, Ajur expressed that he didn't have the time to deal with such a small thing. Tank rushed a few times, but was unable to break through the other party's defense. In the end, he could only glare hatefully at the other party and return to Fengwu's side. No, we're going to find someone. Tank's aunt was there. You're not going to take the entrance exam to Notre Dame du Starlight. With your strength, you should be able to pass. He thought that the other party was a new student like him. He didn't expect this guy to not plan on taking the entrance exam. Wasn't this a waste of his strength? Why are we going to Notre Dame du Starlight? Along the way, Fengwu had heard the name Notre Dame du Starlight more than once. However, she had no idea what Notre Dame du Starlight did. Of course it's to learn magic sword skills. Looking at your weapon, you should be a swordsman, right? Notre Dame du Starlight's library has a lot of advanced sword skills. As long as you pass the entrance exam, you'll have a chance to learn these advanced sword skills. Isn't that great? There was actually someone in this world who didn't know what Notre Dame du Starlight did. Where did this girl live in the past? This was too inconceivable. Chapter 12. The surrounding uncles felt that this scene was very mysterious. These two had clearly just fought, but now they could actually stand together and chat so calmly. No matter how they looked at it, this scene was somewhat unbelievable. Sword skills. Her master had taught her before. I don't want to go. The girl shook her head honestly. She had a master, and her master had taught her many things. You really don't have any aspirations. The youth muttered. The girl blinked in confusion, not understanding why the youth would say that. Xiao Wu, ignore this guy. He wanted to hit you just now. Tank really couldn't stand it anymore. He didn't want to see this silly girl being deceived by that bad boy. Fengwu blinked. I didn't hit him. In Fengwu's eyes, an attack without killing intent would not be seen as hostility. It would be too late if I hit him. Tank rolled his eyes. Save me, can this girl not be so honest? At this time, a staff member came in and told everyone that the flying beast car was about to take off. Please stand properly and don't fall. Everyone returned to their seats and sat down. Fengwu hugged Little Bun and pulled Tank to sit in their own little corner. The flying beast cars now were not like the airplanes on Earth that could be fastened with seatbelts. When taking off, if one couldn't maintain their balance, they would fall. Of course, if you were strong enough, you wouldn't have to worry about falling. That youth was like that. Because he was strong enough, he didn't find a place to sit like the others. Instead, he stood to the side and stared at Little Bun in Fengwu's arms. This Little Bun was really very cute. He had white hair, black eyes, snow-white skin, and red lips. He was very cute. The little guy seemed to have slept enough. At this time, he was nestled in Fengwu's arms and spitting saliva. When the flying beast took off and began to fly smoothly, some people began to move freely. Ajur was very interested in Little Bun in Fengwu's arms. He moved closer to Fengwu and stretched out a finger to tease the little guy. This is your little brother. It was the first time that Ajur had seen such a small child. He was the youngest child in his family, and there was no one younger than him. Therefore, Ajur was very curious about such a small child. It's my baby. Fengwu looked at Ajur seriously. Yours. Ajur's eyes widened as he pointed at Fenwu and the little fellow who was spitting bubbles in her arms in disbelief. You mean to say that you gave birth to it? Okay. Fenwu nodded. Tank nodded in understanding. When he first found out that this little guy was Fenwu's child, he was also scared half to death. The people who had been chatting by the side also noticed the commotion and suddenly remembered that the red-haired boy had appeared and had to stop their conversation. Out of curiosity towards the little bun, the surrounding people began to stretch their ears and secretly pay attention to the situation. You're married. Married at such a young age. What were her parents thinking? How could they let such a young girl get married and have a child? Ajur blamed Fenwu's parents, whom he had never met before. It wasn't that he had any special thoughts about the Fenwu girl, but he felt that Fenwu wasn't like the other girls he knew who wanted to cling on to him the moment they met. Moreover, her personality was quite to his taste. Because of the above reasons, Ajur had some thoughts about Fenwu's parents' irresponsibility. No. Fenwu shook her little head. Then. Ajur wanted to ask again, but he noticed that there were so many people straining their ears to listen, so he suddenly closed his mouth and didn't say anything. After all, this was someone else's private matter. If Fenwu wasn't married, then this child's birth was very problematic. It didn't matter if Fenwu had been abandoned or if she had met with some misfortune. It wasn't appropriate to talk about it in front of so many people. It's okay. Are you hungry? I'll treat you to a drumstick. After saying that, a large roasted drumstick appeared in Ajur's hand. The youth's smile was more dazzling than the sun, making Fenwu dazed for a moment. This person was like the sun. Fenwu sniffed cutely. Thank you. After thanking him, she took the drumstick. Tank watched from the side and drooled. This drumstick seemed very delicious. Although he wanted to eat it, the sensible Tank didn't ask Ajur for a drumstick. This child was still holding a grudge against him for attacking Fenwu. Here, this is for you. A large drumstick appeared in front of Tank's eyes. Tank swallowed his saliva and finally reached out to take the drumstick. Forget it, seeing that he took out such a delicious drumstick, he would give him another chance. If he dared to attack Xiao Wu again, he would definitely beat him up. With this thought, Tank completely forgot that there was a huge gap between him and the other party's martial arts value. I want to eat too. Mommy, I'm hungry. Little Baozi called out twice, expressing to his little mother that he wanted to be fed. Are you hungry? Fenwu held the drumstick in one hand and the baby in the other, looking down at little Baozi in confusion. I want to eat, I want to eat. The little guy waved his lotus root-like little chubby hands. Fenwu understood that little Baozi wanted to eat. Looking at the drumstick in her hand and then looking at the drumstick in Tank's hand, Fenwu decisively turned her head to Ajur. What? Ajur vigilantly stared back. Help me feed the baby. As she spoke, a soft little thing was placed in Ajur's arms. Ajur reflexively took it. He was afraid that the little thing would fall, so he held it a little tighter. He was also afraid that it would hurt the child, so he loosened his grip. You're so assured that you'll give this child to a stranger? Wasn't his vigilance too low? She really didn't know how this guy grew up. Then how can I not be considered a stranger? Fenwu blinked. This young man gave her a very warm feeling, like a little sun, making her feel warm and safe. Fenwu's environment was very simple since she was young. When she was at Mount Yuehua, the only person she could come into contact with was her master. Because the little Fenwu had lived in the mountains since she was young, other than a bunch of animal friends, she didn't even have a single human friend. Although her childhood wasn't lonely, Fenwu didn't have much trust with humans, so she didn't know how to make friends with them. She could only slowly fumble around with her feelings. Fortunately, although Fenwu didn't have much interaction with humans, she didn't know if it was because she grew up with animals, but Fenwu was very sensitive to humans. She could tell who could be trusted and who couldn't at almost the first time she met them. For example, this young man called Ajur gave Funwu a good feeling. Although he used that strange fireball to hit her, he didn't have any killing intent. Funwu girl treated it as a competition. She used to compete with small animals in the mountains. Chapter 13. Ajur was speechless as he hugged Little Bun. He couldn't believe that the girl in front of him had almost knelt down in front of him. It wasn't easy for her to be this stupid. At the very least, you should know the other party's name first. Ajur felt that he still needed to teach this girl what to do if she was cheated in the future. Then what's your name? Funwu's learning ability was very good, and her ability to accept things was also very strong. My name is Ajur. My name is Funwu. We aren't strangers anymore, she said as she took out a milk fruit from her spatial ring and handed it over to Ajur. Ajur naturally recognized what fruit it was. Wasn't this the favorite snack milk fruit of the magic beasts? This milk fruit only grew in the central areas where magic beasts lived. It was very difficult for ordinary mercenaries to get close to those places. He really couldn't tell that Funwu actually had such a good thing on her. This milk fruit was a magic fruit that could be eaten by a small number of human infants. This was because the milk fruit contained a small amount of magic power. Although this magic power was weak, it could be secretly absorbed by the infant's body. Many nobles liked to feed their newborn children with milk fruits. However, because milk fruits were hard to find, and most importantly, hard to pick, the price of milk fruits had always been high. One fruit could be sold for a high price of 1 gold coin. After taking the milk fruit, Ajur helped Funwu feed Little Bun the milk fruit. Little Bun's mouth had become bigger. Now, he could eat more than half of the milk fruit in a meal. In the past, he could only eat less than half. After Ajur and Funwu became friends, he laid out his bed next to Tank. As for the middle-aged mercenary who was originally in that position, Ajur naturally asked him to leave. Originally, the 3 middle-aged mercenaries who first met Funwu had laid out their beds next to Tank to protect the little brother and sister. Now, it seemed that this youth had become friends with Funwu. Based on their observation, although this young man had a bad temper, he wasn't a bad person. At the very least, he didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards Funwu. After making sure that Funwu and the others were safe, the 3 of them moved to the side and gave the seat next to Tank to Ajur. Generally, 10 people would sleep in a shared bunk. At night, everyone would be vigilant. After all, they were outside and had to be careful. There were people from all over the place on the flying beast carriage, so they had to be careful. Funwu didn't think too much about it and fell asleep not long after lying down. Little Bun slept between Funwu and Tank, leaving the job of changing diapers to Tank at night. Fortunately, Little Bun was a good child. Even if he peed or was hungry in the middle of the night, he would only let out a kitten-like cry and pat Tank's face with his little hand to wake him up. See, even such a small fellow knew that his little mother was unreliable. The first night was very peaceful. Other than the occasional babbling of a baby, there was only the sound of some mercenaries snoring. The next day, all 10 people in the room woke up early. No one was lazy enough to sleep in. Funwu stretched and tidied up the blanket on her seat. The blanket was provided by the carriage company. Every time a guest was sent out, the blanket would be cleaned and then replaced with a clean blanket. In the morning, the chef on the flying beast carriage prepared breakfast. Anyone who wanted to eat breakfast could go to the dining hall. The dining hall had free black bread to eat. If one wanted to eat better, of course, they had to pay extra. The breakfast sold on the flying beast carriage tasted very good. These mercenaries who often rode the flying beast carriage went to the dining hall with familiarity. The 3 mercenaries who were more familiar with Funwu invited Funwu to eat with them. Funwu remembered that she still had a lot of food in her spatial ring. She also had a lot of meat buns stored, so she politely declined their invitation. Ajur also didn't seem to be interested in the food on the flying beast carriage. He took out a few sausages from his spatial equipment and gave them to Funwu and the others. Funwu also generously took out her big meat buns. The three of them enjoyed a delicious breakfast together. Because little Baozi had already been fed by Tank once, he wasn't hungry yet. He opened his eyes wide and played happily by himself. Xiao Wu, I want to go to the washroom. Tank's little face was red as he said embarrassedly. Do you know where the washroom is? Funwu asked Ajur. Because it was their first time riding the flying beast carriage and they didn't use the washroom yesterday, the two of them really didn't know where to go to the washroom. Coincidentally, I want to go too. Let's go together. Ajur helped carry little Baozi and took Funwu and Tank to the washroom. In fact, the washroom wasn't far from their room. They just had to walk to the end of the corridor. When Tank saw the washroom sign, he rushed in. It seemed that he had been holding back for a long time. You go too. I'll take care of the child. Okay. Funwu nodded obediently. She let little Baozi be obedient and went into the female washroom. Let's go. It's just the two of us left. Carrying little Baozi with one hand, Ajur also entered the male washroom. Not long after the three of them went in, another pedestrian entered the washroom. Four girls walked into the washroom noisily and washed their faces and combed their hair in front of the mirror. Orlando, this time, Notre Dame du Starlight's entrance exam, how confident are you? The four girls chatted while washing up. What kind of stupid question is that? Orlando is our school's top student. Her magic talent has reached the 7th level. Instead of worrying about Orlando, you should worry about yourself. A girl rolled her eyes. What do you mean? I'm just worried. I heard that Roland Academy's Lan Mo will also participate in this entrance exam. Aren't you worried? Roland Academy and White Star Academy had always been at odds. Orlando and Lan Mo were recognized as the goddesses of the two academies. There were countless pursuers in the academy. As goddess-level beauties, the two beauties' family backgrounds were also similar. Naturally, they became the targets of comparison. Both of them had a temperament that refused to admit defeat. Several confrontations were evenly matched, and no one could take advantage of the other. This time, Notre Dame du Starlight's entrance exam naturally became the stage for the two to compete. Millie, are you worried that Orlando will lose to Lan Mo? Why do you have so little confidence in Orlando? Another girl opened her mouth. Although the three of them considered themselves as Orlando's best friends, the three of them knew that their status was actually similar to Orlando's subordinates. With their family backgrounds, naturally, they were not qualified to be Orlando's best friends. Although the three of them were Orlando's subordinates and classmates, there was still a certain competitive relationship between them. Wasn't there a difference between trusted subordinates and ordinary thugs? The three of them were naturally Orlando's trusted subordinates, but there was still a difference between them. Therefore, whenever there was an opportunity, the three girls would not hesitate to trip each other up. When Millie heard Ailu's words, she knew that the situation was bad. The three of them also understood Orlando's personality. This noble girl in the eyes of others was actually a ruthless and narrow-minded person. Chapter 14. Sure enough, Orlando's expression changed, and she stared at Millie coldly. No. I didn't mean that, Orlando. I'm just worried that Lan Mo will use some means to disturb you. I just want to remind everyone to be careful and not fall for that little bitch Lan Mo's tricks. Others say that Lan Mo is gentle and kind, but who doesn't know that woman is used to pretending? She pretends to be aloof from worldly affairs, but in fact, she wants to compete with Orlando every time. Not only does this woman know how to pretend, but she also knows how to use tricks. Just like the last time when Orlando competed with her on the zither string suddenly broke. I heard that someone saw Lan Mo's maidservant whispering to the staff at the competition venue that time. I don't believe that Lan Mo didn't instigate that incident. Millie was Alando's lackey for many years, so she naturally knew what to say to make Alando stop finding trouble with her. Sure enough, when Alando heard Millie's words, her gaze changed, and she no longer looked at her coldly. However, this time, her expression became a little deep. Did you really find out that someone saw Lan Mo's maidservant interacting with the staff at the competition? Although she asked this, Alando already believed it in her heart. She felt that it was very unusual for the zither string to break inexplicably during the competition, but there was no evidence to prove that it was done by someone else. She didn't expect Millie to help her so much by finding out such an important thing. Although the competition had already ended for more than 2 months, no one would believe her even if she went to say that Lan Mo was the one who did it, let alone provide any concrete evidence. However, these were not important. She just needed to confirm that the person who played tricks on her was Lan Mo. Lan Mo, let's wait and see. When Millie heard Alando's question, she immediately nodded fiercely. In fact, Alando's zither strings broke because the 3 of them accidentally dropped the zither from the carriage when they were sending it to the venue. That was why the accident happened. After that, the 3 of them were afraid of being blamed by Alando, so they didn't dare to say anything. Fortunately, Alando had always thought that she had fallen into someone else's trap and didn't suspect them. As for what Millie said about the maid, it was indeed true. No one knew if the maid had really bribed the staff of the venue. Perhaps that was really the case. If she was not going to bribe people, why would she ask her maid to look for the staff before the competition started? Although she did not know Lan Mo's purpose, Millie believed that the other party was definitely up to no good. Ailu and Yali exchanged glances with each other. All 3 of them knew what happened during the competition, and they could guess that Muriel was lying. Even if she wasn't lying, she must have only told a part of the truth. But none of them were stupid enough to expose her. If Alando pursued the real reason for the broken strings after they were exposed, then the 3 of them would probably be dead. There was a ready-made scapegoat here. If they didn't let her take the blame, they would feel sorry for this great opportunity. Therefore, not only did the 2 women not expose this matter, they even fanned the flames, saying that they had long seen that Lan Mo was not a good person, and that this matter was most likely done by her. The 2 women were giving examples of how good Lan Mo was at pretending to be innocent, but who knew that one of the toilets behind them would flush. The toilets on the flying beast carriage were engraved with a magic array. The toilets would automatically flush, and the flushed things would be flushed into a specially open small space. There would definitely be no smell to pollute the environment. After the flushing sound, a black-haired girl in white clothes walked out. The girl walked to the mirror and washed her hands as if she didn't see the 4 women in front of her. After washing her hands, she took out her handkerchief and wiped them dry. Hey! Stop right there. Yali saw that the other party actually ignored them and wanted to leave directly, so she immediately called out fiercely. Fengwu heard the voice and looked at the other party suspiciously. Her eyes seemed to be asking, "What's the matter? Who told you to leave just like that? How dare you eavesdrop on us? Tell me, are you that bitch Lan Mo's accomplice?" Millie and the other 2 women walked over and surrounded Fengwu. In the past, when they bullied those girls who didn't like Alando in school, they often did this. Now, naturally, they surrounded her. "I don't know Lan Mo, and I didn't eavesdrop on you." Fengwu bit her lip and looked at these girls seriously as she explained. "Hee, if you didn't eavesdrop, then why didn't you say anything? You secretly hid inside and eavesdropped for so long, and you actually said that you didn't eavesdrop." Millie smiled coldly. Regardless of whether this woman knew Lan Mo or not, just the fact that she had eavesdropped on them was enough for her to be in trouble. Based on their understanding of Alando, this woman was dead meat. "I didn't hide inside, I went in first." Fengwu was unhappy. These people were unreasonable. "You. Don't talk anymore, just do it. This woman needs to be taught a lesson." Ailu pulled out the long sword in her hand and waved it towards Fengwu. This sword didn't use any sword skills. In Ailu's opinion, she was one of the top 10 experts in the White Star Academy's swordsman department. Dealing with this woman who came out of nowhere, she could kill her with a single sword. This attack carried a murderous aura. Fengwu judged that the other party really wanted to kill her. This made Fengwu puzzled. They clearly didn't know each other, so why did this woman want to kill her? At the same time, Fengwu directly leaned to the side and avoided the other party's attack. Ailu's attack didn't hit, so she turned around and directly stabbed her sword towards Fengwu's eyes. If this sword pierced her eyes, then even if Fengwu didn't die, she would still lose her sight. Fengwu was angry. This was a bad person. With a thought, a short sword appeared in Fengwu's hand. She casually used the sword to break the other party's attack. At the same time, when the other party used her sword to block, she kicked towards the other party's heart. This kick of Fengwu's was filled with internal force. Ever since she came to this world, Fengwu had been practicing the inner strength cultivation method her master had taught her. Now, her inner strength cultivation method had reached the 3rd level. Coupled with the sword skills she had mastered, although she didn't know how strong she was in this world, the girl in front of her was as slow as a child's play to Fengwu. She didn't have any attack power at all. After being kicked by Fengwu, Ailu's body flew back uncontrollably until she hit the wall behind her. Ailu fell from the wall to the ground and immediately coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and fainted. Ailu! Muriel and Yali screamed, and then rushed to the place where Ailu fainted. "Miss, you are too ruthless." Orlando, who had been silent until now, had no choice but to speak. Hitting her people was equivalent to hitting her face. If you want to hit a dog, you have to look at its master. If you dare to hit her, then this woman should be prepared to pay the price. She wants to kill me. Fengwu calmly looked at the other party. For people who want to kill her, Fengwu has never been lenient. She let the other party live because she didn't have the ability to kill her. Chapter 15. Orlando stood on the side and didn't speak. She thought that such a small character could be dealt with by Ailu and the other two, but she didn't expect the other party's fighting strength to be beyond her imagination. Although Fengwu's fighting strength exceeded Orlando's expectations, she still didn't think that such a little girl could be her opponent. "If you kneel in front of Ailu and apologize to her now, I can still spare your life. Since you don't repent, then let me take your teacher's place and teach you a good lesson, you uneducated girl." After saying that, a fiery red magic staff appeared in Orlando's hand. This magic staff was bought by Orlando's father at a high price for her. The entire staff was red in color and was made from the feathers of a flame bird. It was also embedded with a level 5 fire element magical beast's core. When using this staff to cast magic, it could increase the attack power of fire element magic. At the same time, a low-level fire magic fireball was launched towards Fengwu. To be honest, even if Orlando's fireball was enhanced by the magic staff, it still wasn't as powerful as Ajur's. Fengwu's sword directly extinguished the fireball, but Orlando didn't give up. Another low-level fire magic fireball was cast towards Fengwu. Fireball was a low-level magic that was 1 level higher than the fireball. The fireball could only be cast once at a time, but this fireball could change into multiple fireballs according to the user's strength. Orlando was now just a small second-rank fire magician. Naturally, it was impossible for her to change too many fireballs. With a low chanting sound, 5 fireballs of the same size flew towards Fengwu. As early as when Orlando made her move, Millie and Yali took Ailu and hid to the side. The 3 of them didn't know Orlando's fighting style very well. When Orlando started fighting, it was completely indiscriminate. They didn't want to get hurt in the hands of their own people. 5 fireballs flew straight towards Fengwu. "This time she's dead," Millie and Yali thought excitedly. Even Orlando was confident that Fengwu would not be able to dodge her fireball attack. No matter how good her swordsmanship was, she did not believe that Fengwu would be able to extinguish 5 fireballs in one strike. However, Fengwu was destined to disappoint them. Fengwu poured her internal energy into the short sword and waved it at the 5 flame bullets. This sword contained the internal energy that Fengwu had cultivated. The vigorous internal energy struck the 5 flame bullets, causing them to have no choice but to change their direction and return to Orlando's side. Orlando was indeed a second-rank magician. The moment Fengwu counterattacked, she saw the flame bullet flying towards her and instinctively opened her magic shield. Magic shield was one of the most basic defensive spells. Anyone with mana could use it. When mages were in danger, they would open their magic shields to protect themselves. At the moment when the magic shield was opened, the 5 flame bullets all fell on Orlando's magic shield. Although the 5 flame bullets were blocked, the magic shield that Orlando condensed with her mana also shattered and disappeared. Fengwu took advantage of the victory to pursue and attack. When the other side was relieved because of blocking the flame bullets, she stepped on expeditious steps and appeared in front of Orlando like lightning. Although mages' long-range attacks were powerful, due to their weak bodies, as long as they were close in, they would have no way to deal with them. After being approached by Fengwu, even if Orlando usually pretended to be calm, she couldn't help but panic. She wanted to dodge, but with her physique, how could she avoid Fengwu's attack? Orlando saw Fengwu's palm hit her chest. Fengwu didn't use too much internal energy. Although it would hurt her, it wouldn't kill her. Orlando spat out a mouthful of blood, and her whole body flew backward. After Elu, she became the second person to be hit on the wall. You wait for me, our White Star Academy will not let you go. Orlando's eyes were filled with resentment, as she looked at Fengwu as if she was looking at her father's murderer. This was the most embarrassing moment in Orlando's life. She had never been defeated so miserably, and the shame she suffered now was brought to her by the woman in front of her. She, Orlando, swore that one day, she would tear this woman into pieces. No matter how crazy and resentful Orlando was in her heart, she couldn't do anything to Fengwu. Orlando. Seeing Orlando injured, Muriel and Yali immediately left the unconscious Elu and ran to Orlando's side. The two of them worriedly checked Orlando's injuries, but they didn't dare to rush up to her. Now that even Orlando, who was the strongest among them, had been defeated, with their skills, wouldn't they just be sending themselves to their deaths? Orlando didn't expect these two guys to help her, and slowly stood up with the help of the two people. Fengwu didn't quite understand why she had so much to say when she had lost. A loss was a loss, wasn't it? When she was on Mount Yuehua, she would obediently admit defeat when she competed with her master and the beasts in the mountain. Then she would find out her own shortcomings and slowly make herself stronger. The people here were really not straightforward. In the end, Fengwu girl came to such a conclusion. She didn't look at the person who was looking for trouble with her, washed her small hands, and then walked out of the toilet. Outside the toilet, Ajur and Tank had been waiting for a while. "Why are you so slow?" Tank pursed his small mouth and said unhappily. "There was someone inside who wanted to fight with me, so I came out a little late." Yes, in Fengwu's view, what they did just now was not a fight, but a fair fight. Fight. In the toilet. Ajur raised an eyebrow. "N." She nodded seriously. "Is the person inside okay?" Tank still knew Fengwu well. Just now, there must have been a blind person who wanted to bully Fengwu, but the result was Fengwu dealt with him. For the people who provoked Fengwu, Tank could only say in his heart, "Have a good trip." He had seen with his own eyes how Fengwu mixed with the wind and water in the magical Beast Mountain range. Still alive. Ajur's mouth twitched. The amount of information in this sentence was a bit too much, let him think carefully. Standing not far from Ajur and the others, the boys wearing the white uniform heard Fengwu's words and immediately had a bad premonition. Sure enough, not long after, the premonition came true. Millie and Yali, both of them supported Elu out of the girls' toilet, followed by Orlando, whose face was as pale as paper, with blood on the corner of her mouth. "Seniors, quickly stop this woman. This woman was found eavesdropping on us in the toilet. Not only did she not admit her mistake, but also injured Orlando and Elu. Quickly arrest her." When Millie saw the upperclassmen waiting outside, she was certain that the woman was dead for sure. The 4 men who were called seniors by Millie were also students of White Star Academy. This time, Notre Dame du Starlight enrollment, many academies sent outstanding students to participate in the entrance exam. Chapter 16. These 4 men were actually 1 year older than Orlando's group of 4, so Orlando and the others all addressed them as seniors. Among the 4 men, 2 of them obviously had a good impression of Orlando. After hearing Millie's words, they immediately looked at Funwu with sharp eyes. Where did this woman come from? She actually dared to hurt their White Star Academy's goddess. She really didn't want to live anymore. Noticing the change in the eyes of the 2 men, Orlando, who had been walking behind Millie's group, chuckled. She wanted to see how that woman could escape. Not all of the male students of White Star Academy were under Orlando's skirt. Fortunately, 2 of the men who looked quite steady exchanged glances with each other, and did not directly fight with Funwu as Millie had hoped. "Don't get too excited, let's first clarify the matter." The boy who spoke was handsome, about 14 or 15 years old, but he had a leader's temperament. At first glance, one could tell that he was the leader of their group. "Roger, what else is there to say? Isn't it obvious? Look at how this woman beat up Orlando and Elu. No matter what the reason is, she shouldn't be so ruthless." This guy who was so agitated that he was spitting saliva everywhere was one of the 2 boys who liked Orlando. "That's right, Orlando and Orlando are members of our White Star Academy. At this time, we should stand together and not let anyone look down on our White Star Academy." The other boy was smarter than the previous one. He had a better understanding of Roger's character. Roger was not the kind of person who would help others because of a personal fight. Only if this matter was related to the White Star Academy, Roger would have no choice but to intervene in this matter. "Miss, you have heard the words of our juniors. Do you have anything to explain?" Roger said to Funwu with a good attitude. Funwu raised her small head and looked at the man in front of her. "They wanted to kill me." Funwu felt wronged. "Did you hear that? They started it first." Tank was the one who understood Funwu the most. With just one sentence, he could understand most of Funwu's meaning. Funwu probably meant that she didn't take the initiative to attack those girls. It was these girls who wanted to kill her, so she had no choice but to act. "They want to kill you." Ajur glared coldly at the 4 girls and unconsciously increased his strength. "Ah! Ah! It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts." The baby cried and protested. He was very dissatisfied with the mistreatment he had received. It was only now that Millie and the other girls noticed that the boy beside Funwu was actually holding a baby in his arms. "What? Is this man your boyfriend? I really didn't expect you to be so good at seducing men at such a young age. You've even given birth to a child. You're such a scum. No wonder you would do something like eavesdropping on other people's conversations in the washroom." Yali was unwilling to be outdone by Ajur. That's right, that's right. It's a shame for people like you to be alive. If I were you, I would have killed myself long ago." It wasn't easy to find an excuse to attack Funwu. How could Millie be willing to let Yali steal the limelight? Now was a good opportunity to increase Orlando's favorability. "Ha! These idiotic women are really disgusting." Ajur was burning with anger. The originally fiery red hair on his head seemed to be emitting a scorching aura. The color seemed to have become more like flames, and even the surrounding temperature seemed to be rising. Who is this person? He can't be an ordinary person. Roger was annoyed. Now, because of these idiotic women, he might have offended a strong person. This young man could make the surrounding temperature rise with him. It was as if there were flames dancing on his hair. What kind of magic talent did he have to be able to do this? At the same time, Orlando also felt uneasy. These two idiots, it was fine as long as they targeted that woman. Why did they have to drag this unknown strong person into this? I'm sorry, I'll apologize to you on behalf of them. Before she could say the word apologize, a big burning hand had already grabbed Orlando's neck. Orlando originally planned to pull the other party to her side with the posture of a weak and beautiful girl, but she didn't expect that the other party would actually make a move like this. He didn't even give her a chance to finish her words. Orlando was lifted off the ground by Ajur with one hand, and the little bun in Ajur's arms suddenly stopped crying. It wasn't that he was scared or scalded, but the scene that he saw now made him feel very strange. Ah! Save! Save me! Because her throat was choked, she couldn't even speak coherently. Help! I can't breathe! Save me! For the first time, Orlando felt that she was so close to death. Let go of Orlando! Millie and Yali didn't even know how the other party bypassed them and ran to Orlando. In order to save Orlando, the two of them had no choice but to throw the unconscious Alu on the ground and raise their swords to attack Ajur. Ajur was holding the little bun in one hand and Orlando in the other. He really didn't have a third hand to repel these two women. If he wanted to repel Millie and Yali, he could only let go of Orlando. But Ajur didn't let go of Orlando like everyone thought, and of course, he couldn't let go of Fengwu's little bun. When Millie and Yali raised their swords to attack him, a magic shield appeared around Ajur. The attacks of the two women couldn't break through Ajur's defense. However, Ajur's magic shield was very unusual. The magic shield had a strong fire magic power, and this power was so strong that it made the people of White Star Academy almost drop their eyeballs to the ground. In addition to protecting its owner, Ajur, the magic shield also took the initiative to attack the people under the magic shield. When the two of them couldn't break through the magic shield with their swords, two fireballs came out from the magic shield and directly attacked the two girls. The two girls were hit by the fireball and screamed. One of them had her face and head burned by the fire, and all the hair on her head was gone. The other was hit in the chest, and the clothes on her chest were burned, and the skin on her chest was burned black. As for Ajur, he still didn't let go of Orlando, as if the miserable state of these two girls had nothing to do with him. Seeing that Orlando was almost out of breath, the other boys reacted. Although the two pursuers of Orlando were afraid of Ajur's strength, but in order to save their beloved goddess, even if there was a monster in front of them, they still had to rush forward. Roger and the other man didn't immediately make their move. They were still observing the strange boy in front of them. Looking at his age, he was only 14 or 15 years old. At this age, he couldn't be a nobody. Why couldn't he remember where he had heard of this boy? This boy was like a human-shaped flame, from head to toe, he was exuding a terrifying and astonishing temperature. Now the whole corridor was astonishingly hot, it was as if they were in a desert. Chapter 17. While Roger was guessing Ajur's identity, the two pursuers of Orlando had already rushed to the front of Ajur. Let go of Orlando, as a man, you actually hit a woman, do you have no shame? A man raised his sword and shouted. Let go of Orlando, or don't blame us for being rude. Another man raised his magic staff and shouted. If the hands and feet of these two people were not fighting so fiercely, their words might be more convincing. Little Bun was held in Ajur's arms, his eyes wide open. What are these people doing? It's so fun, guests, please stop, fighting is prohibited on the flying beast carriage, please abide by the rules of our carriage shop. When Fengwu and the others got on the carriage, the man in charge of checking the number plate appeared at the other end of the corridor. In addition, there were also many people who noticed the strong magic fluctuations here and rushed over. The staff of the carriage shop didn't know what kind of strength he had, but he directly turned a blind eye to Ajur's appearance and the abnormal temperature around him. His tone was very gentle. "Sorry, we were rude, I will restrain our people." Roger stepped forward and said politely. At the same time, he also expressed that he could only restrain the people on his side. As for the other side, he didn't have the ability to command them. Ajur frowned and seemed to be thinking about whether to give the other party face or not. Later, he remembered that he was hiding his identity now, so it was better not to go too far. Thinking so, Ajur directly swung his hand and threw a lando to the wall with a loud bang, making the people who heard it feel a toothache. Alando, who was originally injured by Fengwu, vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood and completely fell into a coma. Alando. The two infatuated men angrily glared at Ajur and immediately ran over to check her injuries. As for Alando, Millie, and Yali, who were also lying on the ground, no one had time to care about them. "I'm sorry, my hand slipped." This apology was too insincere, but at least he knew how to cover it up. He didn't even give the people from the car dealership an explanation after the fight. They didn't know who this young man was, but they instinctively felt that he wasn't simple. As long as he didn't die, he would become a divine transcendence expert in the future. The staff of the garage naturally wouldn't make things difficult for such a future powerhouse. Since he said it was a slip of the hand, then it was a slip of the hand. Dear guests, if you have any personal grudges to settle, please find a place to settle them after alighting from the carriage. Fighting is prohibited on the flying beast carriage. Please don't do it again. After saying that, the staff member turned around and left. Ajur shrugged fearlessly and returned to Fengwu's side with Little Bun in his arms. Tank gave Ajur a thumbs up. "You're awesome." Ajur naturally accepted Tank's praise and stuffed Little Bun back into Fengwu's arms. Little Baozi suddenly returned to a familiar soft and fragrant bosom. He happily spat out bubbles and babbled about the fun things he had just encountered. It was a pity that no one here understood baby language, so they couldn't understand what the Little Bun was saying. Fengwu took her baby and kissed his face in a good mood. "Thank you." Fengwu knew that Ajur fought because of her, so she obediently thanked him. "You're welcome. Anyway, I like those women very much." It was the first time in his life that a woman dared to be so rude in front of him. If the people from the car dealership didn't appear early, it wouldn't be bad to kill that woman. Fengwu nodded and didn't say anything else. Roger and the others supported the 4 injured girls and left. Alando's 2 suitors didn't care about the other 3 girls on the ground and just supported Alando to leave. Roger and the other guy had no choice but to leave with the 3 girls. They didn't even have the chance to say goodbye to Ajur and the others. Roger still had the intention of befriending this mysterious powerhouse. After all, he wasn't the one who had a feud with them. But in this situation, it wasn't a good time to befriend him. It seemed that he could only wait until they entered the Notre Dame du Starlight to find another opportunity. White Star's group of 8 left in such a sorry state. Fengwu and the other 2, along with Little Munchkin, chatted and laughed as they returned to their room. The rest of the journey was relatively peaceful. As Alando and the others were heavily injured, none of them were light or wood magicians. So they could only use some medicine for external injuries and internal injuries. If they wanted to be treated, they would have to find a local priest to treat them when they reached the central city. Without Alando and the others making things difficult for them, Fengwu and the others spent more than 10 days in the flying beast carriage. After a period of long-distance flight, Fengwu arrived at the central city. According to legend, the central city was a city blessed by God. There were many miracles in the central city waiting for people to explore. Many guilds chose to build their headquarters in this place, such as the Adventurers Guild, Magicians Guild, Potioneers Guild, Mercenaries Guild, and Swordmasters Guild. These guilds that had great influence in the world were not allowed to join any country and become part of that country's combat power. In order to show their neutrality, these guilds chose to build their headquarters in the central city, while other countries built their own branches. After alighting from the flying beast carriage, they bid farewell to the mercenaries and adventurers who had lived with them for more than 10 days. Tank's aunt was called Tianyu. According to Tank, his aunt worked in the canteen of the Notre Dame du Starlight. His uncle was the head chef in the kitchen and had extraordinary culinary skills. The Notre Dame du Starlight would only start enrolling students 3 days later. The Notre Dame du Starlight was the largest dual cultivation college in the continent. Moreover, it was built by the Holy Cathedral, so its enrollment was very strict. Every year, very few people passed, almost less than 1 in 10 would pass. In order to enter the Notre Dame du Starlight, other than having extraordinary talent, one's character and luck were also part of the assessment. However, other than talent, the other 2 aspects of the assessment were very mysterious. Other than the residents of the central city and the candidates who had participated in the assessment, almost no one knew about it. As for those who had participated and failed, they would not tell others about the assessment method. Even if someone asked, they would not be able to get anything out of it. Because no one had revealed the assessment method, candidates who wanted to participate in the entrance examination were very curious about the other 2 aspects of the assessment. The Notre Dame du Starlight was very easy to find. Apart from the tallest and largest building in the city, the Notre Dame du Starlight was the second most magnificent building. Just the iconic tall bell tower of the Holy Cathedral was enough to attract people's attention. Chapter 18. As long as they walked towards the clock tower, they would definitely be able to find the Notre Dame du Starlight. The 3 middle-aged mercenaries who first expressed their goodwill to Fengwu and Tank on the flying beast carriage told Fengwu and the others where the Notre Dame du Starlight was after learning that they were going to the Notre Dame du Starlight. They would be able to find the Notre Dame du Starlight by following the clock tower. This method was taught to them by the 3 middle-aged mercenaries. Ajur had been following Fengwu and Tank ever since he got off the flying beast carriage. After knowing that the 2 of them were also going to the Notre Dame du Starlight, it was even more impossible for him to leave. Fengwu, are you really not going to participate in the Notre Dame du Starlight's entrance exam? The Notre Dame du Starlight only recruits students once every 3 years. There are many profound sword skills in there, and I heard that there are even saint-level sword skills. Are you sure you don't want to try? Ajur felt that Fengwu was a very interesting girl. It would be great if they could become classmates in the future. Fengwu bit her lips and hugged Little Bun without saying a word. She only looked at the tall clock tower in the distance and kept walking forward. You really don't want to go? The fire food at the Notre Dame du Starlight is not bad. The chefs there are all first-rate. The student cafeteria has many specialties from various countries. If you go to the Notre Dame du Starlight, you won't have to worry about food until you graduate. After interacting with the Fengwu girl for a short period of 10 days, Ajur already understood the nature of this girl's gluttony. As expected, Fengwu's eyes lit up like the stars in the sky when she heard that there was good food. Good food. Really? Really, really. There are so many good food. You can eat as much as you want if you have the money. As long as you can become the first seat of your grade, you won't even have to pay for the food in the cafeteria as long as you don't get pulled down from your position. The Notre Dame du Starlight gave preferential treatment to the ducks. Not only would they receive a scholarship, but they would also be able to cover the cafeteria's meal expenses. I'll go to Notre Dame du Starlight. Fengwu narrowed her big eyes in satisfaction. She was very happy. Tank sighed. Fengwu was really too easy to kidnap. She would go wherever there was good food. What if she was sold? Ajur also felt a sense of accomplishment. As long as Fengwu was willing to go, he wouldn't have to worry about no one playing with him in school. Fearing that Fengwu would go back on her word, Ajur kept telling Fengwu about the preferential treatment that the Notre Dame du Starlight gave to the year's top student along the way. He also told her that the poor families could enjoy some free meals at the restaurant every day. Of course, those meals were just set meals. Every meal was more or less the same, so it was impossible to prepare a meal that was too good. Although the dishes were ordinary, they were enough to fill one's stomach. Fengwu wasn't immune to the money. Ever since Ajur told her about the preferential treatment for poor students, Fengwu began to inquire about what was considered a poor student and how to apply for the free meals. What's there to apply for? If you don't have money, follow me. I'll treat you to the free meals. Ajur patted his chest generously. Was Fengwu's family that poor? Ajur didn't inquire about Fengwu's background. Naturally, he didn't know about her family's situation. No, I want to apply for the free meals. You're not my brother. You're my friend. Fengwu insisted that she only wanted the free meals. Her last sentence successfully made Ajur speechless. This girl didn't know that the brother that Ajur was talking about was worlds apart from the brother that she had in mind. Alright, apply then. As long as you get into the Notre Dame du Starlight, I'll help you apply. That should be fine, right? Also, brother is just a title. Can we not take it so seriously? You can just treat it as a joke. Ajur said helplessly. This was the first time he saw a girl who was so serious about this kind of thing. Was it wrong to be his sister? One had to know that in his country, there were many girls who wanted to be his sister but didn't have the chance. Joke. What's a joke? This girl grew up in a very simple environment. In the past, the person she interacted with the most was her master. However, her master's temperament was very indifferent. He wasn't the kind of person who would casually joke around. Therefore, Fengwu had never known that there was such a thing as a joke in this world. Ajur and Tank both wanted to vomit blood. Girl, which deep mountain forest did you grow up in? The so-called joke, you can treat it as a joke. It's just a joke. It's not serious. Just take it as a joke. Don't take it to heart. Ajur thought for a while and explained to the innocent girl. Fengwu nodded obediently. There was no need to take a joke seriously. So it was just a joke that wasn't important. If Ajur knew that Fengwu understood him in this way, he would probably vomit blood again. The three of them talked as they walked. Because Central City was very big, it would take at least an hour to walk. In order to not tire himself out, Ajur generously invited Fengwu and the others to take a carriage. The carriage Ajur hired was big and comfortable. It took only 20 minutes to send them to the entrance of Notre Dame du Starlight. Because it wasn't the enrollment period yet and the school was still on holiday, there was no one outside except for an old man guarding the gate. Hello, Grandpa. We're looking for Tank's aunt. Can you help us ask her to come out? Fengwu politely greeted the old man and then told him her purpose of coming here. This was what her master had taught her. If she got lost, she had to greet people first before asking for directions. That was the only way to be a polite and good girl. The girl's eyes were so innocent. The old gatekeeper opened his cloudy eyes and glanced at Fengwu. He could tell right away that she was a girl who was so innocent that she was almost transparent. Then, he glanced at Tank and Ajur. Tank was just an ordinary child and wasn't worth paying attention to. However, the red-haired boy next to him had too much fire magic. Even if the boy didn't deliberately use his magic, he could still feel the power that made people tremble. Could he be one of the 8 children who entered this year without taking the exam? Regardless of whether he was or not, he would know in 3 days. On second thought, the old man stopped thinking about it. The old man's attention quickly returned to Fengwu. He obviously liked this kind of innocent child, so his attitude was not bad. What's the name of this child's aunt? Is she a school teacher or a handyman? The old man glanced at Tank. Tank felt that the old man's gaze seemed to be able to see through his thoughts. It made him feel very pressured, so he unconsciously hid behind Fengwu. Fortunately, the old man only glanced at him and then withdrew his gaze. Obviously, he wasn't interested in this little brat Tank. My aunt's name is Tianyu. She's the wife of the head chef of the student cafeteria. My aunt told me that she also helps in the kitchen. Although he was a little afraid of the old man's gaze, in order to find his only relative, his own aunt, Tank still mustered up the courage to answer the old man's question. Chapter 19. Oh, Tianyu, I know. There's someone like that here. Give me a moment, I'll contact Tianyu. The old man took out a round, transparent crystal. It was Fengwu and Tank's first time seeing something like this, so they looked at it curiously. This is an imaging crystal. If two people know each other, they just have to extract a strand of energy from their own imaging crystal and send it into the other person's communication crystal. Then, the two imaging crystals will be able to establish contact. Judging by the size, color, and energy of the imaging crystal in his hand, it should be a high-grade imaging crystal. It can store at least 200 strands of energy extracted from the imaging crystal at one time. In other words, the imaging crystal in this old man's hand can contact at least 200 people. Fengwu and Tank's mouths were slightly agape. They thought that the crystal in the old man's hand was very mysterious and interesting. Since they were very curious about the imaging crystal, Fengwu and Tank had been paying attention to the old man's actions. Suddenly, a slender figure in white appeared on the crystal. Tank recognized her immediately and cried out in surprise, "Auntie." However, the figure did not seem to hear anything. She only exchanged a few words with the old man. Then, the figure in the crystal became very excited. Not long after, the figure on the crystal disappeared. "Why can't we hear anything, Brother Ajur?" Tank scratched the hair on his little head curiously. This crystal obviously has three modes. The first mode is that only the owner of the crystal can hear and see the image. The second mode is that other people can see the image but not hear the sound. The last mode is that other people can see and hear. Which mode is activated depends on the owner of the crystal. It was obvious that the old man only let them see the image on purpose. He did not want them to hear the conversation between him and Tianyu. "Tianyu will be out soon. Wait for a while." After saying that, he closed his eyes and went to sleep, ignoring them. 15 minutes later, a slender white figure ran quickly to the entrance of Notre Dame du Starlight. When she saw Tank outside the door, she ran over excitedly and hugged him. "Tank! Why are you here to look for Auntie? Did something happen at home?" Tianyu knew that Tank was a sensible child. He would not come to her for no reason. Something big must have happened. Otherwise, this child would not come. "Woo! Auntie!" Tank had been holding back his tears along the way, but when he saw Tianyu, he couldn't hold it in any more and threw himself into Tianyu's arms. "Good boy, don't cry. Come home with your aunt first. We'll talk about it when we get back." Tianyu hugged her crying nephew. She was sure that something big had happened at home. However, Tianyu was an adult after all. He did not lose his mind to talk about family matters at the entrance of Notre Dame du Starlight. After thanking the old guard, Tianyu wanted to take Tank away. "Wait, Auntie. This is Fengwu. Thanks to Xiao Wu for sending me to you. Otherwise, I don't know where Tank is now. Also, this is Brother Ajur. He is very good to me and Xiao Wu." Although Tank was very happy to see his auntie, he did not forget Fengwu who sent him all the way here. Ajur was just a side trip. Tank had some feelings for Fengwu. When he was most afraid, Fengwu appeared and protected him. She sent him to Tianyu. All the food and expenses were paid by Fengwu. Tank was a good child. Although he did not say it, he always remembered this kindness in his heart. Moreover, in Tank's heart, Fengwu was like a sister to him. She was the most important person besides his auntie's family. In Tank's little heart, Fengwu's position could be said to be second only to his auntie Tianyu. "Thank you, young lady. Thank you for sending Tank to me. And thank you, young man. Thank you for taking care of Tank. It must have been a tiring journey. Let's go to Auntie's house to rest. When Tianyu heard Tank's words, she discovered that there was an outstanding man and woman standing next to Tank. The girl looked like a girl from their ancient eastern country. The characteristics of her black hair and black eyes were very obvious. As for the boy, he was very handsome. He was wearing a red magic robe, red hair, and red eyes. At a glance, one could tell that he was a fire magician. Generally, only magicians would like a color so much. For example, ice magicians like to wear white magic robes, water magicians like to wear blue, metal magicians naturally like to wear gold, and so on. This boy was dressed in red from head to toe. There was no doubt that he was a fire magician. Tianyu brought Tank, Fenwu, and Ajur back to her residence outside Notre Dame du Starlight. Notre Dame du Starlight had its own rules. Except for teachers and students, no one else was allowed to live on campus. Tianyu's house was not far from Notre Dame du Starlight. It was only a street away. Tianyu opened the door with a key and let the three people in. Tianyu's house was a two-story Western-style house. There was a yard in the backyard. There were many flowers planted in the yard, and there was a swing. At a glance, one could tell that it was a place for the family's children to play. They followed Tianyu into the living room. The living room was very clean. Although the furniture did not look luxurious, it still gave off a sense of warmth and elegance. Tianyu had just asked Fengwu and the others to sit down when little Baozi began to cry. This child would cry when he was hungry or when he needed to pee. He was usually very easy to take care of and did not make a fuss at all. When Tank heard little Baozi's cries, it had already become a conditioned reflex. He took little Baozi from Fengwu's back and then checked little Baozi's diaper. When he found that little Baozi had pooped, he immediately wiped little Baozi's butt and changed a clean diaper. Tianyu looked at this scene with her mouth slightly open in surprise. When did her little nephew become so good at taking care of children? Once the diaper was changed, little Baozi stopped crying. He was wrapped in Fenwu's arms and spit bubbles to play. This was little Baozi's favorite game. He would not get tired of spitting bubbles for a whole day. This child is? Tianyu asked. This is Fenwu's baby. He hasn't been given a name yet. His nickname is Bao Bao. Tank obviously liked little Baozi very much and answered Tianyu's question with a smile. This is Fenwu's child. Tianyu was shocked. Although this child was Fenwu's child, it could not be that young man's child no matter how she looked at it. This child's eyes were black, but his hair was golden. One look and she could tell that he was of mixed blood. Moreover, Fenwu looked too young. Could a little girl really be the mother of a child? Fengwu, how old are you this year? Could it be that she was already in her 20s and only looked young because she took good care of herself? Tianyu began to find an excuse for herself. I'm 14. Fengwu replied. What? You're only 14. Tianyu exclaimed. 14 years old was not an adult. She was still a child. Chapter 20. Ajur was also shocked. He thought that although Fengwu looked young, she might be 15 or 16 years old. How could she only be 14 years old? She was too young. Did you really give birth to this child? Tianyu asked suspiciously. It was no wonder that Tianyu was suspicious. Even Ajur was very skeptical about whether this child was really Fengwu's child. Fengwu looked like a naive little girl. No one would believe that she was the mother of a child. Yes. Fengwu frowned when she thought of the pain of giving birth. Perhaps it was because Fengwu's expression was too serious. She did not look like she was lying. Tianyu and the others could not help but believe her. Where is the child's father? Isn't he by your side? Tianyu asked curiously. Fengwu looked at Tianyu in confusion. Why would the child's father be by her side? I don't know. Fengwu shook her head. Tianyu looked at the well-behaved Fengwu with pity. This child must have been deceived by some bad man. How could there be such a bad man in this world? He actually hurt such a poor child. Tianyu's sympathy overflowed. In her heart, she had already written several common stories of scumbags cheating Fengwu of money and sex, and the most common story of a pervert abandoning his wife and child. Although Ajur did not make up stories for Fengwu in his heart, he was also dissatisfied with the man who hurt Fengwu. Fengwu, don't worry. If you see that man again in the future, tell me. I will definitely help you teach him a lesson. After teaching him a lesson, they would kill him. How could such a bastard deserve to live in this world? Fengwu. She did not understand what they were talking about. What should she do? After satisfying her curiosity with Fengwu, Tianyu remembered that she had a lot of questions to ask Tank. Being asked by Tianyu, Tank thought of all the things that had happened to him after his father's death. For a moment, he was overcome with grief. While crying, he told Tianyu everything that had happened. When Tianyu found out that his second brother had died, he was so heartbroken that he lost his voice. When he found out that their village had been massacred, Tianyu could no longer cry. He was completely stunned. After coming back to her senses, Tianyu sat on the couch and wept silently. Only the cries of Tianyu and Tank could be heard in the room. After crying for about half an hour, Tianyu came back to her senses. Looking at the tear-stained little Tank in front of her, she said, "Tank, stay with your aunt from now on. Aunt will take good care of you." After saying that, she hugged Tank in her arms and kissed his forehead. Tank buried his little head in his aunt's soft and fragrant arms and cried. That night, Fengwu and Ajur stayed at Tianyu's house for dinner. After the meal, they stayed the night. After knowing that Fengwu and Ajur were going to participate in the entrance examination of Notre Dame du Starlight in 3 days, they were told to stay at home and wait for the examination. Tianyu's husband was a slightly plump man named Lan Wei. He looked to be in his 30s and had an imposing manner. At first glance, one could tell that he was a martial artist. Lan Wei was a good-tempered man. Tianyu was in charge of everything in the family. Basically, Lan Wei had no objection to Tianyu's decision. Lan Wei had a son and a daughter. The son was called Lan Tian and the daughter was called Lan Yu. Together, they were Tianyu. It could be seen that Lan Wei loved his wife very much. During these 3 days in the Lan family, Fengwu and Tank were warmly received. Lan Wei often cooked for them. Lan Wei's cooking skills were very good. No wonder he could become the head chef of a place like Notre Dame du Starlight. 3 days later, Tianyu and Ajur went to the entrance of Notre Dame du Starlight to participate in the first round of the talent examination, accompanied by Tank, Tianyu, and the 2 little ones of Tianyu's family. Ajur, don't you need to line up? Fengwu was in the line for the swordmasters. She saw that Ajur was beside her and didn't line up for the magicians. This made Fengwu puzzled. No need. I am a genius who entered the school without taking the examination. Ajur proudly raised his head. The people in the line behind Fengwu naturally heard Ajur's words. Many people looked at Ajur with envy and jealousy. Only a few people with a strong will looked away after glancing at Ajur. After hearing Ajur's explanation, Fengwu didn't envy Ajur like the others. Very good. After calmly praising him, she focused on lining up. In the past few days, Tianyu and Fengwu had learned a lot. Fengwu already knew what special enrollment students were. The so-called special enrollment students were those who were very outstanding in terms of talent, character, and opportunity. These people were reviewed by the teachers of the academy before they entered the academy. They could directly enter the academy without having to go through the examination. Fengwu knew that being able to enter Notre Dame du Starlight without taking the examination was a very good thing, so she praised Ajur. After being praised, Ajur was even more proud. He felt that Fengwu really had a good eye for people who knew that he was very good. The examination for swordsmen was very different from that for magicians. There were 12 levels of talent for magicians. Legend said that if one's talent reached the 12th level, as long as they didn't die, they would definitely become gods. A magician's talent determined their cultivation speed. The higher the talent, the faster they could cultivate magic. In the Academy of Starlight, the minimum requirement for a magician to enter was a 7th level talent. A 7th level talent was the minimum requirement. There was still a chance for anyone below the 7th level. Magicians and swordsmen were the same. In addition to talent, opportunity was also important. Therefore, if one didn't have enough talent, but if one had a heaven-defying opportunity, one might become a saint or even a god in the future. In order to enter Notre Dame du Starlight, one had to pass 2 of the 3 examinations. Temperament was one of the tests. If one's temperament didn't pass, then no matter how high one's talent or heaven-defying opportunity was, one was doomed to not be able to go very far. Therefore, in order to enter Notre Dame du Starlight, one had to have both talent and temperament, or opportunity and temperament. One had to meet 2 of the 3 requirements. As for swordsmen, there wasn't any specific division of talent. There was only a sword testing stone in the examination area. As long as one's strongest attack could make the stone glow, then they passed. If one couldn't, then they could only participate in the other 2 examinations. Because there were too many people taking the examination, Notre Dame du Starlight only recruited students once every 3 years. There were countless people who wanted to enter Notre Dame du Starlight. From 10 to 15 years old, there were already thousands of children from various countries on the continent. There was a clear rule in Notre Dame du Starlight. Everyone only had one chance to enter Notre Dame du Starlight in their lifetime. If they didn't pass once, then they didn't need to come again. Every time a boy or girl came to Notre Dame du Starlight to apply, they all had the beautiful dream of entering Notre Dame du Starlight. Unfortunately, the entrance examination of Notre Dame du Starlight was too difficult. Usually, out of thousands of people, only 300 or so would remain. It was said that during one of the examinations of Notre Dame du Starlight, there were 380 people who remained. That year's examination was the year with the highest number of new students remaining. Chapter 21. After waiting in line for more than 2 hours, it was finally Fengwu's turn. Many people in front of Fengwu hadn't passed the test. This sword testing stone was very strange. It would increase the difficulty according to the age of the examinee. There were both male and female examinees in front of Fengwu. Some of them looked about the same age as Fengwu, while others were younger than Fengwu. Fengwu remembered that among the 5 people in front of her, only 1 girl had passed the test. Those who didn't pass had to take the other 2 tests. When it was Fengwu's turn, Fengwu stood in front of the sword testing stone obediently. The weapons used for the test were mortal-grade swords provided by the Sacred Institute. If she used her own sword, it would be very unfair to the examinees who didn't have a good family background. For the sake of fairness, the weapons used for the test were all provided by the Sacred Institute. Fengwu picked up the sword and used her internal strength. She didn't use any sword skills like the others. She just waved her sword gently. It seemed easy, but in fact, Fengwu had used about 70% of her internal strength. Her master had said that no matter what she did, she had to hold back. She couldn't let others see her true strength, so Fengwu didn't use all of her strength. When the examinees standing behind Fengwu saw Fengwu waving her sword so casually, they thought this girl was crazy. Everyone only had one chance to take the test of the Notre Dame du Starlight. She waved her sword so casually. She should have used some sword skills. Look at the people in front of her. Which one of them didn't use their strongest sword skills? To everyone's surprise, when Fengwu casually swung her sword and the sword energy landed on the stone, it immediately emitted a bright white light. Although the light was strong, it wasn't dazzling. It could be seen that Fengwu's sword skills didn't have any killing intent or aggressiveness. When a sword with killing intent struck the sword testing stone, the light it emitted would be very dazzling. Moreover, the killing intent would be magnified several times by the sword testing stone, allowing people to easily feel it. The domineering sword would make people feel incomparable pressure, as if a mountain was pressing down on their hearts, making it hard for them to breathe. The people who had just passed either had a killing intent or a domineering aura in their swords. Only Fengwu's sword seemed to be swinging gently, but it did not have any killing intent or domineering aura. Just from this sword, it could be seen that Fengwu's swordsmanship was definitely higher than the people who had passed before, because they could not restrain their aura at will. Fengwu's outstanding performance caused the teachers of the swordsmanship department to nod their heads in praise. Only an extremely talented genius could restrain one's aura at this age. Compared to Fengwu, those who had just passed could only be considered as ordinary geniuses. Compared to the true top geniuses, there was a huge gap. Fengwu, on the other hand, could already be considered a top swordsmanship genius. Wow! The girl in front is amazing. That's because her aura was restrained. So amazing, she can restrain her aura at such a young age. She's really a genius. If only I was as good as her. Such a strong girl. This girl is really awesome. The young men and women who were queuing at the back all exclaimed in surprise. At this moment, at the place where the mage department was recruiting students, waves of exclamations sounded like a tsunami. A dazzling light shot into the sky, and the intense light made it difficult for the young men who were taking the examination not to notice it. Looks like there's an incredible genius in their mage department. Her talent has reached level 12. There hasn't been such a talented child in a few hundred years. The teacher who was taking the examination at the swordsmanship department touched his chin that was full of stubble. That's right, but our swordsmanship department is not weak either. We also have an incredible little genius. The one who spoke was a female teacher. This female teacher looked to be at most in her 20s. Of course, this might not be her real age. No matter if it was a mage or a swordsman, as their strength increased, the speed of their aging would become slower and slower. Sage-level experts would even look to be in their teens or 20s. If it wasn't because they didn't have much lifespan left, they wouldn't be able to maintain their youthful bodies. You're Fengwu, right? Congratulations on passing. Next, as long as you pass the temperament assessment, you will be able to join our Notre Dame du Starlight. You have to perform well in the following assessment. The last of the three invigilators was also a young female teacher who looked to be in her 20s. While the other two teachers were busy lamenting, this teacher still remembered her job. She lovingly stroked Fengwu's little head, said a few words of encouragement, and stamped the passing seal on the back of Fengwu's hand. Only then did she let Fengwu go home. This passing seal was made of magical materials and was difficult to fake. The student who had the seal on their hand would automatically leave their name and basic information on the Notre Dame du Starlight's examination list. Fengwu touched her own little hand. Apart from feeling a little warm when the seal was stamped, she didn't feel anything else. Moreover, the passing seal only appeared on the back of her hand at the very beginning, and disappeared after a few seconds. This made Fengwu feel very strange. Touching the back of her hand, Fengwu was pulled away from the crowd by a jur. They walked towards the direction of Tianyu and Tank. A jur wasn't surprised that Fengwu had passed. What kind of person was he? How could a friend who could catch his eye be bad? It was just a mere entrance examination, a piece of cake. At this moment, the teachers from the Ministry of Magic were all indescribably excited. In front of the testing crystal stood a young girl with light purple hair. The girl's gaze was gentle, and she was petite. She looked to be at most 13 or 14 years old. Her eyes, which were the same color as her hair, didn't show any excitement. She looked calm and natural. The teachers who were secretly observing the girl nodded their heads. It seemed that this student's temperament was also very good. Even after knowing that she had such a high innate talent, she didn't become complacent. Instead, she was so calm. She was really a good seedling. How could these teachers know that the girl in front of them already knew about her innate talent? The girl's name was Zicheng. Before she had transmigrated, her name was Zicheng Lan. That's right, Zicheng wasn't someone from this world. She had transmigrated from Earth. When she had just transmigrated, Zicheng was just an unimportant concubine's daughter from an aristocratic family. Her mother was just a maid in the family. Until one day, her father got drunk and had a one-night stand with Zicheng's mother. That was how Zicheng was born. Zicheng's mother was born into a lowly family and wasn't married by her father. Not long after giving birth to Zicheng, she passed away. Zicheng lost her mother's protection. Although she was a concubine's daughter from an aristocratic family, she didn't have any status in the family. When Zicheng was 14 years old, no one had even tested her innate talent. When Zicheng Lan transmigrated from the 21st century, the original Zicheng had already passed away due to a high fever. In the entire family, no one knew that Zicheng had passed away. This also made it convenient for Lan Zicheng to pretend to be Zicheng. As a transmigrator, Lan Zicheng naturally had her own golden fingers, and they were very powerful. Chapter 22. After transmigrating to this world, Lan Zicheng discovered that Zicheng had a talent for magic. Although it was only a 5th-grade talent, Lan Zicheng used his golden finger to continuously transform Zicheng's body, allowing Zicheng to have a 12th-grade talent for magic. This time, the Notre Dame du Starlight entrance exam was also secretly taken by the current Zicheng. She knew that in that family, no one would think of her. From now on, she would become stronger and stronger, and then take revenge for the original owner. This was the price she had to pay for her rebirth. Not far from Zicheng, a blue-haired girl silently watched the crowd surrounding Zicheng, who was constantly trying to curry favor with her. She was the female lead of this world, Zicheng. She was indeed as beautiful as described in the novel, but she wasn't bad either. Irene was also a transmigrator, but she was different from Zicheng. In Irene's world, Zicheng's world was just a novel. In her previous life, Irene was a third-year university student. Her favorite thing to read were transmigration and rebirth novels. After a car accident, Irene was surprised to find that she had transmigrated. Moreover, she had transmigrated into the female lead, Zicheng's nemesis, Irene. In the original novel, Irene was a rich young lady who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Originally, Irene, who had a 10th-grade talent, was favored by everyone during the entrance exam of the Notre Dame du Starlight. However, she didn't expect that halfway through, Zicheng would appear. Because Zicheng stole the limelight, Irene and Zicheng became sworn enemies. Irene framed and humiliated Zicheng in all kinds of ways, but they were all dealt with by the male supporting characters who adored the female lead. In the end, Irene flew into a rage and killed the female lead, Zicheng, during a school trip mission. Of course, the female lead didn't die in the end, but was saved by the male lead who just happened to arrive at the scene. Irene's framing of a classmate was found out by the other members of the same group. In the end, it was reported to the school. The dean personally issued a document, expelling Irene from the Notre Dame du Starlight. From then on, Irene was hated by her family. She was also abused by the male supporting characters who adored Zicheng. In the end, she was killed after the male supporting characters had enough. When Irene first arrived in this strange world and found out that she had reincarnated into such a tragic character, she began to think of ways to change her fate. She knew that the female lead had a powerful golden finger, but her golden finger wasn't small either. As long as she was careful and didn't cross paths with the female lead too early, she should be able to avoid the fate of being cannon fodder. Although now wasn't the time for her to cross paths with the female lead, she was still very interested in the opportunities that the female lead would obtain in the upcoming exams. When the next round of exams came, she would definitely follow the female lead closely and find the opportunity before the female lead. She didn't believe that she, who had read so many cannon fodder novels, wouldn't be able to beat the female lead. Fengwu naturally didn't know that there were two transmigrated girls gathered in the Ministry of Magic. Even if she knew, she wouldn't understand what transmigration was. Therefore, our Fengwu girl was currently at Tian Yu's house playing with her family's little bun. She was eating the barbecue feast that Tian Yu had made to celebrate her passing the first round of exams. Fengwu, there are still 2 more rounds of exams. You have to do your best. Teng sat beside Fengwu, dancing with joy. He secretly decided that in the future, he would also take the Notre Dame du Starlight. He also wanted to become a student of the Notre Dame du Starlight. Yes, Fengwu, eat more. There are still exams tomorrow. You have to do your best. Tian Yu and Lan Wei's family of 3 expressed their support for Fengwu. Fengwu really nodded her little head, expressing that she would do her best. That night, Fengwu was chased into her room early by the Lan family. They used the excuse of having exams tomorrow as an excuse to not let the Fengwu girl play too late. In order to let Fengwu have a good night's sleep, even the little bun was carried to Ajur's room. Tian Yu originally wanted to carry the little bun into her room, but Ajur used the excuse that Tian Yu and her husband had to wake up early to work tomorrow as an excuse to allow the little bun to stay in his room. In order to let Fengwu have a good mental state to participate in the exams tomorrow, everyone was trying their best to lighten the burden on Fengwu. Fengwu felt very warm and comfortable in her heart. That night, Fengwu went to bed early. In her sleep, Fengwu saw a silver path. On the other side of the path, something seemed to be calling her. She frowned, but still followed the guidance in her heart and walked on the path that led to an unknown place. After walking for an unknown period of time, Fengwu saw a half-closed door appear at the end of the path. Fengwu felt that the voice calling her came from inside the door. Fengwu did not hesitate. She slowly pushed open the heavy door. Suddenly, a strong white light shot out from the door. Fengwu realized that her body was falling rapidly. She seemed to be able to hear the screams of others. Fengwu's body always reacted faster than her brain. When she fell, she had already used her qigong to maintain her balance. Below Fengwu was a large ocean, a beach, and a forest. Fengwu fell on the beach. Beside Fengwu, there were many people falling from the sky. From time to time, the sound of heavy objects hitting the ground could be heard. At the moment when she was about to hit the ground, Fengwu did a backflip in the sky to maintain her body's center of gravity and then landed safely. The others were not so lucky. Some people's heads were buried in the sand. When the people next to them saw this, they went forward to help and pulled them out. Some of the people who fell into the sea were not injured. Those who could swim were fine and could swim to the shore by themselves. Those who could not swim were struggling in the water and screaming for help. Fortunately, the people nearby were friendly. Many of them who could swim went into the water to save people. It was not until half an hour later that those who had fallen into the water were rescued. Fengwu did not go into the water to save people. She stood quietly at the side and observed the surrounding environment. This was an unfamiliar place. The youngest people around her were only 10 years old. The oldest was about the same age as Fengwu. This reminded Fengwu of the assessment during the day. What the hell is going on? I remember that I was sleeping in a hotel. Someone could not help but ask. Me too. This time, I came to participate in the Notre Dame du Starlight assessment. I stayed at my uncle's house. I went to bed very early at night. I don't know why, but when I woke up, I found that I was falling. I was scared to death. Someone patted her chest with a frightened expression. What the hell is going on? Does anyone know? Some girls asked in a low voice. Could it be that this is also part of the assessment? Someone whispered his guess. Zicheng helped a girl to sit to the side. When she fell into the water, there was a girl next to her who could not swim. She conveniently saved her. Only now did she have time to observe the surrounding environment. Erin sat not far away from Zicheng. Beside her were a few other girls who were drenched. Since most of them fell into the sea and only a few of them landed on the beach, apart from the lucky ones who didn't fall into the water, most of them were drenched in sweat. Chapter 23. Fortunately, most sword masters knew how to swim. Magicians had weaker physiques, and sword masters were more straightforward. Although they didn't know each other, they still went forward to save many magicians. Otherwise, these young magicians would be miserable. While everyone was discussing, 3 illusory figures appeared in the sky. Although they were just illusory figures, the powerful aura they exuded made it clear that these 3 people were definitely top experts. Looks like everyone is safe. You must be very curious now. I won't beat around the bush. I'm the supervising teacher for the second and third tests, and the 2 beside me are the same. When you pass the test and officially become a member of the Sacred Court, you will naturally know our names. I believe some of you have already guessed it. Yes, this is the venue for the last 2 tests. You are now not on the Heavenly Wind continent. Instead, you have been sent to a strange space. In this space, we have hidden magic books, sword skills, magic staffs, and magic swords everywhere. On this continent, there are many opportunities waiting for you to discover, but there are also unimaginable dangers. The natives of the continent will destroy all invaders. If you are found and killed by the natives, you will fail the test. But you don't have to worry. This time, you only entered this world as spiritual bodies, not physical bodies. So even if you are killed, you will only wake up from a dream. There will be no harm to your body. If you don't encounter any opportunities or find anything at the end of the test, you will also fail. If you find something that you don't need in the end, such as a magician finding a swordmaster's sword, or a swordmaster finding a magician's magic staff, then I can't let you pass. All the magic items we put in this space are divided into different attributes. Only those who find items that suit their attributes and survive to the end can pass the test. Now, I'll give you 10 minutes to ask the 3 of us questions. Without affecting the rules, we will answer the questions that we can answer. If you can't answer, you will have to explore by yourself. Start asking questions. The shadow standing in the middle was a woman around 27 or 28 years old. She was wearing a magic robe. Beside her stood 2 men holding swords. They were about the same age as the woman, but the aura emitted by the 3 of them proved their powerful strength. Facing the 3 powerful teachers sent by the Sacred Court, the young men and women participating in the test didn't dare to open their mouths to ask questions. Teacher, if the thing I need is found by someone else, can I snatch it from them? A young man with black hair and eyes asked first. When the young man spoke, everyone's attention was attracted to him. The young man wasn't tall, and he wore a black magic robe. He was obviously a magician. At this moment, the young man's expression was calm. He didn't show any signs of panic or evade the gazes of so many people looking at him. The young man's eyes were very calm, and the 3 teachers had a good impression of him. Of course, but students are forbidden from killing each other. Because the person who asked the question was a mage, the female teacher answered again. Any other questions? The Sacred Court to the Sacred Court to the Sacred to the Sacred to the test. The Sacred Court, the Sacred, you won't be attacked there, and each of you will have a blue space pouch with 10 silver coins in it. If you want to get more coins, you can use your own methods to earn money in the city and use the money to buy the things you want. In the central city, there are clues about the treasure map. If you want to quickly find the magic items we have hidden, you can try your luck in the city ahead. Alright, I won't say any more. The last 2 rounds of the test are about to begin. The test will last for a month. After a month, we will come to pick you up. Please work hard. After speaking, the 3 shadows disappeared at the same time. They didn't even give the sacred court time to ask a few more questions. What do we do now? Someone looked around uneasily. How about we go to the neutral city first? Didn't the teacher say there was a treasure group in the neutral city? Someone else said. Thus, everyone decided to go to the neutral city to find the treasure map. But where was the neutral city? The teacher had only said that the blue city walls surrounded the neutral city, but he hadn't said where it was. At this time, some people were moving alone, while others were moving in groups. Fenwu stood alone at the side. Sometimes she would look at the sea, sometimes she would look at the trees. She was listening to the sounds of the trees and the waves. Look, more people are coming. It's the same as last time. These people fall from the sky every time. It's so strange. Yes, humans are so strange. I wonder where they come from. Look, that girl in the blue dress. Her aura makes me feel so comfortable. She's coming towards me. A few trees were chattering non-stop. When Fenwu heard their voices, she walked towards them. Who are you? We like the aura on your body. Hello, you can call me Sky Blue or Xiao Wu. Fenwu walked in front of the trees and greeted them in a friendly manner. Can you hear us? The trees shook their leaves with interest. I can hear you. Can I ask you a question? Do you know how to get to the neutral city? It's a city surrounded by blue walls. We don't know. We've been here since we were born. Other than people falling from the sky every once in a while, we've never left this place. Then do you know who knows the way to the neutral city? Fenwu continued to ask. The trees lowered their branches. They didn't look very energetic. We don't know either. It's okay. I'll go ahead and ask. Fenwu carelessly touched the tree closest to her. The little tree shook its branches excitedly and shouted happily. She touched me, she touched me. Touch me too. I want to touch her too. Me too. Me too. Touch me too. Touch me too. Touch me. Touch me. I'm very nice to touch. The remaining trees that hadn't been touched were excited. They wanted to be touched too. Fenwu touched the trees beside her. They were finally satisfied. Fenwu pursed her lips and smiled. There was a small team beside her. They had just formed a team and agreed to go find the neutral city together. Zicheng and Irene were in the same team. The team leader wasn't either of them. The person who asked them to form a team was a man who practiced swordsmanship. He looked to be around 14 or 15 years old. He had a good figure and a bright smile on his face. He looked like a guy that girls liked. Chapter 24. There were 5 girls and 5 boys in this team, making it a total of 10 people. Originally, they had already formed a team, but at this moment, the captain saw Fenwu, who was alone. Such a beautiful girl couldn't be left alone. So, the party leader, who thought of himself as a gentleman, immediately trotted behind Fenwu and asked the girl to form a party. Hello, are you alone? Do you want to join my party? We have 10 people in our party now. Including you, that's 11. Do you want to join? Peita smiled brightly and in a friendly manner. Party? Fenwu turned her head in confusion when she heard the voice. Yeah, aren't we going to the neutral city? It's better for everyone to go together than to go alone. Although we're rivals, we'll talk about it after we reach the neutral city, right? Once we find the neutral city, we'll find the treasure map with our own abilities. Fengwu looked at the boy in front of her quietly. After listening to him, Fengwu nodded. This person didn't have any malicious intentions. Let's go. I'll take you to the others in our party. Peida walked in front and led the way for Fengwu. In fact, the others weren't too far away from Fengwu. It took less than 2 minutes to walk there. At this time, Zicheng was talking to a few other girls. Among the girls, one of them was the girl he saved. This girl was called Sally. She was a cheerful girl. Zicheng liked her personality. Irene was also chatting with 2 other girls. From time to time, she would calmly exchange glances with Zicheng. Zicheng didn't notice Irene's strange behavior at all. He didn't know that the girl in front of him was a female supporting character who wanted to turn the tables on him. Let me introduce everyone. This girl just joined us. Her name is... Peida just realized that he didn't know her name, so he turned to Fengwu awkwardly. I'm Fengwu. Fengwu didn't understand what the other party meant, but she knew that she had to say her name at this time. Hello, welcome to the party. Are you a swordsman? Me too. My name is Silda. A girl smiled at Fengwu in a friendly manner. I'm Zicheng, a magician. I'm Irene, also a magician. My name is Gannard, magician. My name is Kyle. I'm a swordsman. My name is Eve. I'm a magician. My name is Melissa. Welcome to the team. I am a swordmaster just like you. My name is Hans, swordmaster. My name is Amen, a magician. Nice to meet you. I'm the temporary leader of the team. My name is Pelder, and I'm a swordsman. In the end, Pelder introduced himself as the leader. After exchanging their names, professions, and names, there were exactly 6 swordmasters and 5 mages in a small team. After exchanging their names and professions, they began to discuss which path they should take. Some of the teams that had already formed had already chosen to leave. Many of them decided to enter the forest first, while others decided to go around the beach to observe the situation before making a decision. Fengwu and the rest of the team had already finished their discussion when the other teams and solo players set off first. In fact, Fengwu didn't say anything from the beginning to the end. She only listened to the others. It was Irene's idea to enter the forest directly. Irene had read the novel before, so she naturally knew the location of the neutral city. Although she had never been there, she knew the general location. In fact, in order to reach the neutral city, they had to go through the forest first. There were many small villages outside the forest, and the people living in those villages were the local natives. These natives were very dangerous. If they went around these villages, they would reach the neutral city that was further ahead. Since everyone agrees with Irene, let's go through this forest first. As the team leader, Peida finally announced the result of the discussion. There were several teams that thought the same as Peida and the others. There were many smart people in this world. Many people guessed that the so-called neutral city was most likely not in this forest. If they wanted to find the neutral city, they had to leave this forest first. However, this forest was very dangerous. There were many magical beasts residing here. If they wanted to go through it, there would be a few fierce battles. The forest was indeed very dangerous. Fengwu's group of 11 slowly walked in the forest. They didn't dare to walk too fast. After all, the forest was a very dangerous place. This forest wasn't too big. As long as they found the right path, it wouldn't be difficult to get out. However, it was really difficult to figure out which path was the right one. This time, even Irene couldn't do anything. Irene only knew that Zicheng's team finally walked out of the forest. As for how they got out, she really didn't know. The book didn't write about it in such detail. What should we do? Which way should we go now? Eve stood behind Zicheng, holding Zicheng's arm and looking at the surrounding forest in confusion. Eve was the girl who was saved by Zicheng. Ever since she was rescued on shore, she had been by Zicheng's side. Irene looked coldly at Eve's dependence on Zicheng. Eve was an important cannon fodder in the early days. Eve's brother was also a student of Notre Dame du Starlight. Later, Eve introduced him to the female lead and fell in love with her at first sight. Later, in order to protect the female lead, he died in Irene's hands. Eve didn't alienate Zicheng because her brother died because of Zicheng. Instead, she became closer to her. Later, when Zicheng was in danger, Eve helped Zicheng block a fatal blow and died just like that. Before she died, this girl named Eve was still thanking Zicheng for letting her know what true friendship was. She hoped that she could still be good friends with Zicheng in her next life. When she saw this, Irene was simply speechless. The brother and sister died for this so-called friend, and she was still thanking the female lead for letting her know what true friendship was. Shouldn't normal humans pray that they won't meet again in their next life? For people like Eve, Irene didn't even bother to rope her in. She didn't understand the world of deep ice. Peida was also hesitating about which way to go. These roads looked similar, and he had no idea which one was the way out of the forest. Fenwu stood behind everyone, listening carefully to the sounds around her. Do you know the way out? Fenwu realized that she could use her mental power to communicate with these natural creatures. Soon, the trees, flowers, and grass around Fenwu happily pointed the way for Fenwu. In the end, a dandelion told Fenwu which way was the right way. Because it was blown into the forest from there, it remembered it very clearly. After thanking the dandelion that pointed the way for her, Fenwu walked to Peida, who was having a headache. This way, we can get out. When the others saw Fenwu suddenly walk to Peida, they thought she was going to do something. They didn't expect her to say that. Can we really get out of this way? How do you know? Sealda asked curiously. For Fenwu, the swordmaster girl who joined later, everyone felt that she was a very quiet and introverted girl. If you didn't talk to her, she wouldn't say a word to you. If you talked to her, she would only answer if you asked her a question. If you didn't ask her a question, she wouldn't answer. How could they chat like this? So after chatting with Fenwu for a while and finding that it was boring to be with her, these girls stopped talking to her. Chapter 25. Silda's question was the same as everyone else's. Fenwu spoke in a serious tone. It did not seem like she was just guessing. Fenwu did not say anything. Her master had told her not to tell anyone that she could understand animals and plants. Those people would be afraid of her, so Fenwu only bit her lip and did not say anything. Fenwu's sullen expression made Silda feel a little awkward. He did not do anything to her, did he? Why did he feel like he was a bad guy who bullied a little girl? Since Fenwu said that this is the way out, let's try it. We don't have any leads anyway, Pelder quickly made a decision. The others did not have any objections. They did not know which way to go anyway. They would just take a random path and try their luck. The 11 of them followed Fenwu's directions, but after 2 days of walking, they still did not leave the forest. Eve was the first to cry out, "Is this the right way? Why can't we get out after walking for so long? I think we're going the wrong way. This forest is so big. It might take some time to get out." "Don't worry, Eve." Although Zicheng did not know the right direction, he could feel that they were walking on the right path. "Yeah, I don't think we should give up so early. The forest is so big. We can't walk out in a day or two. Eve, you're too impatient." Irene looked at the forest. She felt that if they continued walking, they would be able to get out. She could not let Eve ruin it. But what if this path is wrong? Wouldn't that be a waste of time? Marissa wasn't too sure. "Let's walk for another day. If we really can't get out, we'll think of another way," Hanses said after a moment of silence. "I think so too." Alman agreed with Hans. "Kyle, Gannard, what do you think? Pelder asked the other two male members. Let's walk for another day. I feel like we're almost out of the forest. Kyle and Gannard exchanged glances, agreeing to walk for another day. What about you, Silda? Melissa asked Silda, the only female member who didn't say anything. Since everyone thinks that this is the right path, let's continue walking. I think what Zicheng and Irene said is very reasonable. This forest is so big that it would take us at least a few days to get out. We've only been walking for 2 days. It's still too early to say that we've taken the wrong path, Silda said in a more pertinent manner. Why are you all siding with that Fengwu? You believe her just because she says it's the right path. I even said it's the wrong path. Look at her, she keeps a straight face all day long and doesn't say anything. She answers every question we ask her. I don't know if there's something wrong with her brain. How can you believe the words of such a person? Eve's father was the president of a chamber of commerce. She was pampered since she was young. Ever since she tried to talk to Fengwu but didn't get much response, she had been dissatisfied with Fengwu. After walking for 2 days without getting out of the forest, the dissatisfaction in her heart completely exploded. Fengwu pursed her lips and lowered her head. She didn't refute Eve's words. Fengwu wasn't angry. When she went down the mountain with her master, the children at the foot of the mountain would also say some unpleasant things. Her master told her that it didn't matter what others said. Those who didn't like her, she should just ignore them. If they crossed the line, she could also teach them a lesson. She shouldn't feel bad because of some unimportant people. Fengwu had always been an obedient child. She listened to her master's words. Therefore, she didn't care about those children who said bad things about her. If a child threw small stones at her, she would use her internal energy to make the stones bounce back and let those bad children suffer the consequences of their own actions. After those children were hit by the stones they threw a few times, they didn't dare to find trouble with Fengwu anymore. Of course, there were still some who said bad things about her. Fengwu didn't care about Eve's words, but others didn't think so. When they saw Fengwu lowering her head and not saying anything, they looked even more pitiful. Eve, you've gone too far. Fengwu didn't do anything to you. Why are you talking about her like that? Silda was a girl with a relatively straightforward personality. She couldn't stand this kind of bullying the most. She was the first to stand up and reprimand Eve. What did I say? Can't I speak the truth? It's not like I'm the only one who thinks so. Clearly, many of you think so too. Why don't you admit it? Eve looked at Silda with disdain. Because of her good family background, Eve had seen many two-faced people around her. Therefore, she especially hated people who didn't mean what they said. She felt that Fengwu's personality wasn't likable. She was afraid that everyone didn't like her in their hearts. They clearly didn't like her, but they didn't say it out loud. How hypocritical. Many people think so. Tell me, who do you think? Call them out for me to see. Silda laughed in anger. This Eve was simply ridiculous. Marisa, tell me. Do you also dislike Fengwu? Little Cheng, you also think that Fengwu is very annoying, right? In Eve's eyes, Marisa, who spoke up for her, and Zicheng, who saved her, were naturally on her side. When she was arguing with Silda, she didn't hesitate to drag them down with her. Marisa didn't think that the fire would burn her. She uneasily tugged at the corner of her clothes. Marisa's family background was very ordinary. Her father was just an ordinary hunter. If it weren't for her talent, which allowed her to become a student of a magic and force academy and free tuition, she might have been like an ordinary village girl who got married and had children once she reached a certain age. Marisa cherished this opportunity to apply for the Notre Dame du Starlight. She didn't want to make enemies with anyone. However, the current situation was beyond her control. Marisa was a little angry at Eve for dragging her down with her. Eve, I don't dislike anyone. What I said just now was only my guess. It doesn't mean that I dislike Fengwu. Marisa was speaking the truth. She really didn't dislike Fengwu. Besides, there was another reason why Marisa said that. She was a swordswoman. Even if she entered the Notre Dame du Starlight in the future, she would still be a member of the swordsmanship department. She wouldn't have much interaction with Eve from the magic department. Fengwu was also a swordswoman like her. If she sided with Eve at this time, others would think that she was siding with someone from the magic department. She didn't want that to happen before she even entered the academy. Marisa's denial angered Eve. How can you say that? You clearly don't like her either. Why don't you say it out loud? What are you afraid of? Marisa was so useless that she didn't even dare to say what she was thinking. That's enough, Eve. We're all on the same team. Can you stop arguing? Zicheng frowned. She felt helpless. She didn't think that Eve, who always acted like a cute little girl in front of her, would be so unreasonable. Irene sneered inwardly. She didn't even think of trying to persuade Marisa. That author had really beautified Eve's character. Chapter 26. In the novel, Eve was discovered by someone she regarded as her best friend behind her back when she was young. Ever since then, Eve hated people who pretended in front of her. In the novel, Eve was someone who hated pretending. When the author described Eve's character, she always said that she dared to love and hate, and that she was pure and without pretense. In fact, after interacting with Eve, Irene felt that she was a very contradictory person. She didn't like people trying to curry favor with her, but she also didn't like people acting like they didn't care about her. In short, Eve gave Irene the feeling that she was a lunatic. She wanted to feel the truth, but she was only willing to accept the truth that she believed to be the truth. Irene really didn't know how such a person managed to catch the eyes of the female lead. Little Cheng. Even you won't help me, right? I thought Little Cheng and I were good friends. Eve looked at Zicheng with red eyes, her eyes filled with the pain of being betrayed by her best friend. Eve really treated Zicheng as a good friend. When Zicheng saved her, the two of them didn't know each other. Eve valued this kind of life-saving grace more than anything else. She felt that Zicheng was a kind girl, which was why she helped her when they didn't know each other at the time. She didn't expect that Zicheng, who she thought of as a good friend, wouldn't stand on her side. This was something that Eve couldn't accept. Zicheng felt a headache coming on. She had always thought that Eve was a cute little sister, and she had taken care of her along the way. Only now did she realize that she didn't know enough about this girl. Eve, what do you want me to help you with? Help you fight with everyone? The most important thing right now is to think of a way to complete the exam, not fight among ourselves. Zicheng was trying her best to persuade her. After all, Eve was the first person who expressed kindness to her. In Zicheng's heart, she still cared a lot about Eve as a friend. In any case, you just won't help me. After Eve finished speaking, she turned around and ran away, tears streaming down her face. Eve felt very wronged. She clearly wanted to persuade everyone to change their route for the sake of everyone. Why did everyone choose to believe that Fengwu? What was so good about that Fengwu? Eve! Zicheng shouted behind Eve. Eve ignored him and continued running forward. Is she crazy? Why is she running around in a place like this? Does she want to die? Silda felt that he was really drunk. This Eve was really a young lady who couldn't bear to be wronged. It was clearly a small matter, but she could make it seem like the whole world had betrayed her. What do we do now? Are you going to chase after her? Hanses asked hesitantly. Although they were in the same party, this was only a temporary party. Their main goal was to leave the forest and go to the neutral city. Who would have so much time to look for an insensible young lady? Zicheng, do you want to go look for her? Eve will be fine like this, right? Irene walked to Zicheng's side and asked, pretending to be concerned. Zicheng was also very hesitant. Should he go look for Eve? She had to pass this exam. He couldn't let anything affect her results. However, Eve was her first friend in this world. Eve's safety was also very important. Zicheng didn't know what to do for a moment. Irene sneered. She wanted to see if this exam was more important in a female lead's heart, or if that Eve was more important. But where did this Fenwu come from? She clearly remembered that there was no such person as Fenwu in the novel. No, Fenwu's name sounded very familiar, but she definitely wasn't a main character. Could she be a random passerby? While Irene was pondering over Fenwu's identity, Fenwu kept looking in the direction Eve ran. Don't worry, she'll come back in a moment. Silda thought that Fenwu was worried about Eve and inwardly praised her for being such a kind-hearted girl. Something is coming this way, Fenwu said to Silda in a serious tone as she sensed the information coming from the wind. What is it? Kyle was closer to Fenwu. When Fenwu answered Silda, he also heard Fenwu's words. His expression became a little strange. Before Fenwu could answer, an earth-shattering roar of a beast resounded through the world. Help! Xiao Cheng, save me! Eve, who had disappeared, indeed came back on her own as Silda said. But this time, she didn't come back alone. She was followed by an unknown monster. This monster was fiery red and its whole body seemed to be surrounded by flames. It was about 3 meters tall and 5 meters long. It looked a bit like a fire crocodile, but a fire crocodile wasn't this tall. At this time, this monster that looked like a fire crocodile was angrily chasing after Eve. No one knew what Eve did to make this monster so angry. Damn it! This is a level 8 mutated fire crocodile. Pelder recognized the monster. This was indeed a fire crocodile, but it had mutated. Originally, a fire crocodile was just an ordinary low-rank monster, but a mutated monster was different. This kind of mutated monster could break the shackles of its own bloodline. Originally, a low-rank monster like a fire crocodile could only grow into a level 5 monster in its lifetime. But because of its mutation, this monster had grown into a level 8 monster. Zicheng was the highest-ranked magician in their group, but he was only a level 5 magician. Irene was a level 4 magician, and the sword masters were about level 4 or level 5. To be honest, if they wanted to fight an level 8 fire crocodile, it was tantamount to courting death. Roar! The loud roar of the beast sounded again. Eve had already run not far away from them. The fire crocodile directly used flame burst and spat out a large amount of flames from its mouth. The terrifyingly high temperature set the forest on fire. After Pelder shouted and spread out, almost everyone scattered at the same time and was not burned by the flames. Everyone, quickly kill this monster. Eve was lucky enough to avoid the fire crocodile's attack. She quickly ran to Zicheng's side and shouted at Pelder and the others in horror. Roar! Give me back my child, despicable human, give me back my child. Roar! Give me back my child, despicable thief. The fire crocodile spat out flames crazily as if it had gone mad. The forest around Pelder and the others fell into a sea of fire. Some of the weaker animals quickly ran out of this area, afraid that they would be accidentally killed by the king of this area. Look, what's going on in front? Some of the nearby teams noticed the soaring flames on Pelder's side and screamed uneasily from time to time. Leave quickly, a monster has gone berserk. Some people guessed what was going on and immediately took their teams around to avoid the fire crocodile. On this side, Pelder and the others were dodging the fire crocodile's attacks. Although they had tried their best to dodge, the fire crocodile's attack power was too strong. In just a few minutes, several people were burned by the intense gunpowder. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.